A world gone insane. An upside-down civilization that cannot be real. A world of madness and terror.
It's the Dana Gould Hour.
Today's show is brought to you by Casper. Get $50 towards any mattress purchase by visiting casper.com/Dana and using the promo code Dana at checkout. Terms and conditions apply. I just bought one, and that's no lie. Oh, the weather outside is frightful. But nonetheless, welcome to the holiday 2017 episode of the Dana Gould Hour podcast. Never an hour, but usually with me. Recorded high atop Los Angeles at Falcon's Lair recording studios. We have two incredible interviews today and a heapin' helpin' of audio extras for your listening pleasure, hopefully while you're traveling and traveling safely. First of all, it is December, and that calls for our year-end recap. Last year, I'm sure you'll recall how, prior to Election Day, we all thought we knew exactly how the year was going to turn out. Well, it didn't quite work out that way, did it? So joining me at the mic today is none other than Mike Murphy. I'm a Democrat. He's a Republican. But outside of that, we walk alike, we talk alike, we even wear our socks alike. Mike is no Trump apologist, to be sure. A dyed-in-the-wool anti-Trumper from the get-go, but he does have some unique insight into how the other side approaches this most unique period in our history. Joining Mike and myself is Pete Aronson. Pete has held many an executive position in show business, as well as being a very talented writer, all-around funny guy, and this is the second time I've interviewed him, and the second time we haven't gotten around to talking about it, an amateur race car driver. But if you're a fan of Stand Against Evil, you have Pete to thank for it. But more than all of that, he's a smart cookie, and I'm excited to get this conversation going. We also have Danny Bland with us. Compared to Mike and Pete, Danny is a disreputable hobo. Hobo, I say. And that's why we're friends. Danny is, among other things, the road manager for the Blasters. And yeah, I'd say he has some stories. He's also the author of the excellent novel In Case We Die, which details his oh-so-funny recovery from heroin and the people he met along the way. Danny, well, you'll hear it all. I wish I had Danny on every month. He is the real deal. As for me, well, if you're in the Atlanta, Georgia area, I will be back at one of my favorite clubs in the country, the Laughing Skull, January 4th, 5th, and 6th. And then I'll be back up to San Francisco, where I just was, on January 18th, 19th, and 20th for good old Sketchfest. Thanks to little Janet Varney from just down the street. Go to the live appearances page at danagould.com for details. But I must tell you, on January 19th at Sketchfest, at the Marines Memorial Theater, the folks who brought you last year's live staged reading of Plan 9 from Outer Space are reconvening for a live staged reading of the John Travolta classic, The Boy in the Plastic Bubble. It stars not only Stand Against Evil's me, Janet Varney, Deborah Baker Jr., and Nate Mooney, but also Scott Adsit from 30 Rock, Maria Bamford from Lady Dynamite, Steve Ogg from The Walking Dead, and Ron Lynch from Bob's Burgers. The Boy in the Plastic Bubble. See it. We want to put its germs all over you. Again, go to the live appearance page of danagould.com for ticket links, etc. Lastly, but not leastly, if you're in the Washington, D.C. area, I will be at the Arlington Draft House in Arlington, Virginia, February 2nd and 3rd. For details and links to all of this malarkey, please visit the live appearance page at danagould.com. But enough of my yakking. It's on to our filthy business.
It's the Dana Gould Hour podcast.
The Dana Gould Hour. Free and worth it.
It is a deceptively calm and sunny day high atop the Mulholland view shelf here in Falcon's Lair recording studios. To put this in a historical context, LA has just only one sunset ago dodged a flaming bullet, although we are certainly not unscarred. But I am here with two gentlemen whose houses still stand, and we're going to wrap up the year in this Nathaniel Westian dystopian day. I am joined by how do I even describe you? Socio-political gadfly, Hollywood Republican. How would you describe yourself?
You're giving yourself a stroke.
Republican consultant, now Hollywood writer,
children's magician, dating columnist, podcaster. Most of you who know Mike will know him from his appearances on Meet the Pressed. Meet Depressed is what he calls coming to my house, or Meet the Press, which is a television show. And you worked for many years in politics, put many people in office, and now you have your completely second career here in beautiful Hollywood, California, where everyone's honest and great. It's true. I'm the only right-wing nut Republican political consultant with 30 years of running campaigns and a tattoo, I Heart McConnell. That's also a dues-paying, reluctant member of the Writers Guild of America.
That's right. The teaming.
I bridge both crazies.
The teamy commie hive that is the Writers Guild. Mike Murphy is here. Say hello, Mike.
This is the sound of my voice.
And an old friend of mine and a man who started off as a writer, because that's how we worked.
I was a line producer.
You were a line producer, and then you became a writer.
Yeah.
So that's what I love about both of you guys, is that you understand both sides of the coin. You understand the show and the business, and that applies not only to show business but to politics. It's show and business. But now you're the what is your title over there?
I am the head of programming and production for IFC.
So if you're a fan of Stand Against Evil, you can certainly thank this guy or blame this guy. And
they should blame you.
Yeah, they should blame me.
Thank you, but blame you.
But old man, a writer on the late lamented Super Adventure team, you gave a little Jeff Garlin his first break in the business.
I did.
Pete Aronson is here.
This is the sound of my voice.
Now, we were, it's very funny, to go back 12 months, Pete and I did this podcast in early November of 2016. No, it was late October. And
it was the week before the election.
It was the week before the election. And we were just smugly saying, well, clearly Hillary's going to win. And
like morons, classic Hollywood dipshit WGA members, just like you, Mike, morons. We were saying she was going to win.
And then thinking, like the trick would be how quickly people will go, can you believe how Donald Trump was almost a president? Like, when will that set in? November 10th, November 11th? When will we emerge from that fog? And
here we are, still in it.
And you realize before the end of the election, but
I'm right here in the moron parade. I was on.
Well,
television.
we were texting and then you stopped texting me.
Well, yeah.
Man down.
Yeah,
no, it was.
I just got Broward. It was one particular county came in, and you went, "Oh shit!"
Yeah, it was early. We could say, I said, "Make your zombie stick sharp and head for the hills." later. Things are going to get very dark very fast.
Yeah,
I was actually sitting there with Carville. We were both working for NBC election night, and they put us in like a little studio with, I think it was Lawrence O'Donnell, away from the main thing. It was like the old guys studio, And when we want to lose viewers, we go to guys who've actually done elections.
Yeah, exactly.
Back up to the laser graphic in Miss Oklahoma or whatever. And so we're sitting down there, and we're both on our BlackBerry. Now, I had predicted that Hillary was going to win because I was looking at the math of the election, where she had for all her epic faults as a candidate that we now know, and we kind of knew then. I thought, no, there's no way she's going to beat him by 2 to 3.5 million in the popular vote, and the Electoral College will follow like it has most of the time. We've only had 5 times in the history where it hasn't happened, and never with a $3 million delta. It's more like 400,000 was the biggest with President Bush in 2000. So anyway, yeah, I was making bets. It was all done. And a little bit of inside politics stuff here. There's a betting pool in Florida. I've done a lot of work in Florida. I was Jeb Bush's consultant down there. And the Democrats and Republicans all do a bunch
Now,
of
is this
bets.
the first weird thing to come out of Florida?
Well, that is a long topic. Stripper capital of the world, by the way.
Separate podcast.
Exactly. So anyway, make a long story short, we were all emailing back and forth, and some of the Trump campaign consultants had bet against Trump. Nobody thought he was going to win. And the reason there's this special betting in Florida is Jacksonville, Duval County, comes in pretty fast and pretty early. And it's a good bellwether. It's Republican County. We win it by a couple. So the early Jacksonville stuff came in, and Trump was underperforming Mitt Romney. Bad sign. And so all of a sudden the emails start and, okay, it looks like Florida's going to go for Hillary. At the Hillary campaign, the rumor is that her campaign staff went marching down the hall, hail to the chief, and, gave her the good news.
Oh, boy.
Yeah.
Oh, boy.
Worst thing in the world to be is a candidate on election night in a murky situation, because the emotional roller coaster is unbelievable.
I can't imagine.
The smart one's like, go to sleep, tell me tomorrow.
Yeah.
It's an empty whiskey bottle out cold till the next day to face it.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, make a long story short, everybody thought, okay, it's tipping. And the exit polls all day had been terrible for Trump. So the Trump campaign staff, some of the people you see on television.
And Trump also thinks he's going to lose.
Everybody thinks Trump's going to lose, including Trump. The Trump campaign staff are all calling reporters, blaming each other for the loss. And, the Hillary people are getting the champagne ready and all that. And then all of a sudden things start changing. Some of the other Florida counties, he is blowing Romney away, like Pasco County. He's underperforming in the early places, this was a once in a lifetime kind of election night where this stuff comes flying in that's not supposed to.
Right.
And Carville's there, and he's getting bad news from Virginia. I'm looking at Michigan, a state I grew up in and worked in. I worked for a couple of statewide candidates there, the governor and the senator.
And you're from Michigan.
I know Michigan well. And I'm looking and like, Jesus, there's something in the water. And in Wisconsin. And so it's one of these things where there's a great essay somebody wrote about the crash of the Titanic, the sinking of it. And there's a wonderful phrase I'm going to get wrong, but one of the officers, like his diary, who survived, said, "I'll never forget the sound of 4 Packard automobiles, 22 grand pianos, 9,000 pieces of china, 400 chairs sliding across as the ship turned over." And that's what it kind of felt like, oh my God, this thing is getting away. And the Dems, who are totally buckled in, fighting about office space, ready to write their memoirs, I Genius by the campaign team. It was
There's 8 writers of that book.
No, endlessly. There, you got helpin on line 2. And then I came up with this whole idea. And it's all in 30 minutes imploding on itself. But yeah, I got it wrong. It was close. I still think it was kind of a margin of error election. I don't want to delegitimize. He won fair and square-ish. But we're talking about, if you look at Michigan, Pennsylvania and Wisconsin, any one of which tipped the scales against him if he hadn't won all 3. Mm-hmm. There were about 13.8 or 9 million votes cast in those 3 states. His margin was 78,000 votes. This thing was like a hiccup inside the machinery.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If 50 flies had jumped up and down twice in Wisconsin, it's that close.
Yeah.
But that's how the cookie crumbles.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And so, no, but I, like most of the mathematicians, we all got it wrong.
I'm at my daughter's school last night. There's a dance recital, and it's a lot of, it's on the west side, and it's a lot of very well-to-do people. And I was talking to a friend of mine who's a very well-regarded showbiz lawyer whose house just escaped the fires. And I said, "Did you guys have a go bag?" And he goes, "Yeah, I had," he goes, "It got very real. I told my kids, you pack up, I might come in your room in the middle of the night and give you a 5-minute warning and we got to get out of here." And I go, yeah, shit gets real, really quick. And he said the interesting thing, he goes, "Yeah, you can't negotiate with a fire." And it's just like, it doesn't matter what, all your years of power and money, at a certain point, the wave of fate comes and it's like, yeah, deal with it.
Yeah, no, it was reality.
The pianos slide down the deck.
Gravity all of a sudden turns an ocean liner upside down. Quite a sound.
Yeah.
And so that was it. And then there were 2 stunned groups. The Dems who were like, we won the lottery. The Rolls Royce is going to be here in an hour. No.
Yeah.
And some poor Clinton advance guy. I'm guessing about this, but there's that Trump Tower.
I know the story.
And somebody, I'm guessing, okay, but I just know how political operatives think. Somebody said, hey, election night, we're doing across the street from Trump's place and really screw him. Ha, ha, ha. He'll be able to hear the music. Cut to.
Yeah.
Yeah, he heard a funeral dirge.
Yeah.
So meanwhile, on the Republican side, kind of Republicans Incorporated, on one hand are like, well, it looks like we're having a great night. Yay. On the other hand, did the transition committee ever meet?
Yeah.
Last we heard there was like a pie fight and they were handing out crayons and everybody went home because they couldn't win. And, we got to take control of the government of the only superpower in a little while here. And Jesus fucking Christ, and so there was kind of a mini Republican panic on the government side. Mm-hmm. And then that led to, here we are. Now, I didn't vote for Hillary Clinton and I didn't vote for Trump. So I was an anti-Trump Republican because I thought he, by character and everything else, was not qualified to be the president. But I also think Hillary has an ethical blind spot you could drive a locomotive through. So it was not a happy election for me to begin with.
Right.
But I sure thought she had the numbers to win.
It's fitting that I have my guest with me today here in Falcon's Lair recording studios on a dangerously windy day. Author,
Sure.
musician, road manager, tour manager. How would you describe yourself? Rock on tour. Danny Bland is here.
Hello. This is the sound of my voice.
So you sound like you should be doing like ads for No-Dos.
I should. No-Do should give me a call. The only thing I laughed at in your introduction was the musician part, because although I've played on a lot of records and been in a lot of bands, in the last 15 years, I've discovered that I'm not actually a musician because I work with musicians now. and so over the years, I realized that I played the part. Rock and roller, I could qualify for,
right?
But musician.
Yeah, there's a difference.
There is a big difference because, I've learned in the last few years that I'm not actually a musician.
So
never was.
You have many occupations and areas of expertise. And I want to talk about your book and hit people to your book. You have a couple books, but. What your day job now is you are working with Dave Alvin.
Correct.
Of the Blasters.
Yes.
Often including the Blasters, but more just Dave.
Mostly Dave, and occasional. Well, I will road manage his brother's band, the Blasters,
right,
when I'm not road managing Dave, and recently Dave Alvin and Jimmy Dale Gilmore together. Mm-hmm. So
we should, for the sake of the listeners, we have to give a little bit of cultural background. The Blasters, if you're unfamiliar, came out of Downey, California, in the late '70s. One of the pillars of the not only the LA punk scene, but I guess it would cowpunk. Although cowpunk came later as a.
Yeah, I mean, there's
a label.
I guess there's many names for it. I think they call it Americana now, and they call it, it's rockabilly, but
it's roots rock.
Roots rock. That's probably the closest, I think. But really, the Blasters were an R&B band.
Mm-hmm. They got their name from the Blues Blasters,
right? And the while Los Angeles punk scene was playing, hardcore punk rock, they were really just playing fast versions of R&B songs. They were playing black music, really.
Yeah. And those bands, but they were on the same bill. That's what's amazing.
Yes.
Like you'd have at the Mask, you'd have like the Blasters, and you'd have X, and you'd have Suicidal Tendencies, was
Black Flag.
Yeah. Flesh Eaters, DOA, all those bands were all around at the same time.
Yeah, and I lived in Phoenix at the time, and the Blasters were kind enough to come out there and play a lot. And they were actually, and I would, as a 17, 18-year-old kid, the Blasters and X were my god band. So
yeah.
I came out to Los Angeles many times to see them play.
Yeah, and it's amazing. It is amazing how we're both grown men, adults. But it's that music that rings your bell when you're just coming of age that never leaves you.
Exactly.
Like, I'm always suspicious of people over 45 that are really into a brand new band. You know, like, really?
Yeah. I can't remember, I've long since given
I mean, you
up
should
on
never shut
new
yourself
records.
off to new stuff, but the new stuff is just like, well, yeah, I like that when it was around the first time.
Yes, exactly. And there's,
you see these things just cycle over
and there's
and over.
70 years of recorded music that I have yet to explore every single inch of it. So there's plenty of old music for me, for old guys like me.
Yeah. So Dave Alvin is touring now, and you're his tour manager. You're the in Spinal Tap, you are the role that Tony Hendra had. You're basically, and you told me a really funny story. What's it like? How long have you been working with Dave and the Blasters?
The first tour I did with Dave was in 2004 with the Knitters.
Right. And the Knitters it's basically half X, half the Blasters, and some other people.
And still is. They just don't, they just put out a record every 25 years.
Yeah, not unlike me.
and tour, I don't know, how long has it been? Tour every, let's say 5 years.
Right.
And so I went out and tour managed the Knitters, and I've been Dave's guy ever since.
Right.
Yeah.
And there's a big difference between touring with a band of guys in their 20s and 30s and touring with a band with guys in their 40s, 50s, getting up into their 60s.
Well, yeah.
There's a lot of drugs, but now they're all prescription.
Different drugs now. In my early...
Before it's like, you didn't take any drugs, did you? And now it's, did you take your pills?
Exactly. In the early days, or I've always been the tour manager of even the bands that I was in. I didn't realize I was the tour manager for a long time, but,
what were some of the bands you were in?
I was in a band called Catbutt that was on Sub Pop. Yeah. I was in a band called the Nova Boys. Was the first band I was ever in, and then I was in a little rock combo called the Dwarves, who were infamously poorly behaved, and so we in
now
those
would you
days,
have to change your name to the Little People now? I don't know what the acceptable nomenclature is.
I think Dwarves is still an okay word to say. I'm not sure.
I'm not sure either. I'm terrified to find out.
Tweet.
You don't want to step in it.
Tweet it, Dana Gould. So back then I would write. This was pre-cell phone, and so I would write the name of the hotel that we were staying at, or the address for the house that we were crashing at on people's arms before they took off into the night after the show to debauch.
Was this in the Dwarves, or
was in Catbutt for sure?
Uh-huh.
The Dwarves were a little more organized than that. But,
that might be the greatest sentence that has ever been said on this podcast. That was in Catbutt for sure. The Dwarves were a little more organized.
Well, it's true. The Dwarves were sort of for all of our antics. It was very much a guerrilla war type organization. Like, we knew what we were doing. Even if it was. Even if the plan was to go out there and get in a fight with the audience, it was planned. It wasn't, it was something that we were experts. We were professionals.
Uh-huh.
So,
there was a wrestling quality to it.
Exactly. Except for people get hurt and actually get hurt in wrestling too. But
yes, they do.
Yeah.
Even if they're, I know a lot of wrestlers with my association with Lucha Vavoom. Even if you're doing everything you're supposed to do, you there's no way. A fall is a fall. You hit that canvas, it hurts.
And I'm a huge fan. And then I just went. I just got second row seats for the WWE Raw up in Seattle a few weeks ago, and I could not have been more excited. I brought my daughter with me. We used to bond. And when she was 5 years old, we watched wrestling. That was our thing. And now, as a 26-year-old, to see her as excited and she is as hip as hell,
Sure, yeah.
like in living in Capitol Hill in Seattle, and to see her as excited to see wrestling up close as she was a thrill for me. But I watched, you just have to watch them. It's like, I couldn't do that. I would die.
Yeah.
It's just with one fall, one move, hospital for me. So.
Yeah, no, it's just constant training is really what it is. It's like you train up to the match and then you recover for a couple of days and then you just start training again.
Right.
It's a tough life, but there's a beautiful aspect to it is it's pure showbiz. It's all of the artifice and put away. It's right in that level of carnivals that I feel comfortable. It's right in my comfort zone.
Oh, it's the perfect. I mean, it is the ultimate in show business, really. I mean, I talk to people, people want to talk about music with me all the time, but I'm like, I like music. I mean, it's okay. It's not really entertainment.
Yeah.
But it's part of entertainment. And I always use wrestling as a perfect example. Like if they didn't have music to walk down to the ring in, it would seem empty. Mm-hmm. But really, wrestling is wrestling is ballet, it's fighting, it is Shakespearean stories, and it also plays in arenas around the country all year long. There's not a rock band in the world that can do that now.
But you are, you are something of a man without a country right now. You're not alone. But,
that's why I'm living in your basement.
But you had a really popular podcast last year called Radio Free GOP that was really
voice
popular.
of the Republican Revolution.
Yeah. And it quickly became the voice of the Republican resistance.
Yeah.
Because, there is, I tell people that, like, I remember we went to Lucha Vavoom one night.
Oh, that's right.
Is,
yeah.
A really popular show here in LA that, with, it's masked.
I want to see how you try to describe it. What's the log line for this? Masked
luchador Mexican wrestling and burlesque routines. Everything important is covered.
Yes.
It's, everyone on that stage is somebody's daughter. And
you have served as one of the
I was MC,
Howard Cosell.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
The giant headpiece with an antenna.
Yeah, the Howard Cosell mixing wrestling meets arty weird stripping / no, it's not stripping, burlesque.
Burlesque meets alternative comedy.
Right, exactly.
Everything I'm involved in is a redheaded stepchild. But long story short, people came up to me later and go, somebody said you came to that thing with Mike Murphy. Like they knew you from television. Like, what is Dana doing with a Republican?
Oh yeah. No, I get a lot of that.
I have a lot of friends who are Republicans. I like people.
It's LA. I go to dinner parties here and there'll be whispering in the corner. My God, it's like Lord Greystoke of the jungle. You can use a fork. They expect me to like strip to my underwear and swing from the chandelier. It's like, look at that. He appears to not be afraid of electricity. So
you're saying knuckle draggers don't actually drag their knuckles?
They're very nice because they come up and they kind of poke. They speak. So hello. Do you hate gay people? And then they look. But most are pretty cool about it and all that. And there's a little secret world of conservatives out there.
Well, it's a testament.
Oh, for sure.
It's a testament to the bubble that we talk about. That we're all in our own little information bubble.
I'll go out to a good red state that votes the way I want, and I'll like give a speech or something. I'm out on the circuit. And, what's it like there in Hollywood? What are they up to? Is it as bad as we think? Because they all imagine it's like Keith Richards is like raping a bunch of 17-year-olds covered in cocaine and, saluting the Russian flag all day long.
Yeah.
So
only
neither side really. Yeah, right, exactly.
He wishes he had that kind of energy.
Yeah, exactly.
But I work at a company that's headquartered in New York, and I walk around the offices of AMC networks, and there's guys with Trump shit in their office.
Oh, yeah.
It's not that bizarro.
No, it's not. And
although in New York, to be fair, almost no one supported that guy. I think the stat,
no one who knew him supported.
Well, that's why they didn't.
Yeah,
I think the stat was in Brooklyn, the Bronx, Staten Island, Queens, Manhattan, the 5 boroughs. 1 in 9 voted for Trump. And when you ask them, why did you, the 9 people who didn't, they say, because we knew him.
Yeah.
That's why we didn't.
You
We
hear
knew him.
that
This guy's
from
a shyster.
People in his business a lot.
Yeah.
Well, the old man was, you know, from Queens and mobbed up to get the land.
Yeah. It's this,
so
but
they had a long history in that city, and it wasn't pretty.
yeah. And
And strangely, it was racist.
every single
Queens?
They wouldn't sell
In
to
the
black people. It's
50s?
crazy.
Yeah,
what is
Into the
amazing?
70s. That's when they got sued for it.
Yeah.
In the 70s.
What is amazing is and it's a historical anomaly. Every day he does something that would have destroyed anyone else.
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
He
but-
is as resilient.
Look at Obama. If Obama take any of the top 100 things that he's done and have Obama do it, and
Well-
that would have been the end of it.
well, part of it is that.
But I want to get back to
I'll
why
wrap
you
up on
stopped-
Radio Free. but
Yeah,
the shame ray is gone. In the old days,
Yeah.
you know, the elites who kind of influenced America in both parties would tisk something enough, and the shame ray would work, and you know it could drive somebody out of office if they really had crimes. Now,
yeah. And I will say,
Clinton put up a pretty strong defense. The shame ray didn't work too well on him,
Right.
But the Trump has turned up the offenses much higher, and the shame ray just bounces off him because it's a reality show to him. It's conflict's good.
Yeah.
Absolutely. It
Drives ratings.
Yeah. Season ender. Okay. I'm going to hit the Supreme Court justice with a chair, you know.
Right.
And the political establishment and the political values of the country have never had a shame ray proof politician before.
Yeah.
And that's why it's all choked together. But anyway, to wrap up, I had a lot of fun for Radio GP. I get a lot of emails. I think a lot of your listeners listen and vice versa.
Yeah, well, that was the point I was trying to make. It's like that for if you only watch MSNBC or listen to MSNBC, you don't realize that there's a lot of people that aren't in your political party that just have a different view of the role of government, but they're not evil.
No. The biggest problem we have in politics now is this construct on both sides that I'm right, you're evil.
Yeah.
Because when you think that way, everything you say is a lie, and anything I do to destroy you is good because I'm fighting evil.
Right.
As opposed to we disagree, we're all Americans. Why don't we agree the Russians are up to bullshit here?
Yeah.
So I put Radio Free GP on hiatus for a while, simply because I got nothing new to say this year. I've been pretty clear what I think.
Oh, dude,
tweet
I
a
haven't
lot.
had anything new to say for 2 years, and I'm still flogging this motherfucker.
I'm looking at the.
Don't say that to the executive who just picked up your show.
I'm talking about this show.
I must admit, I like all the Castro mattress gold furniture and dripping riches I see around here
Yeah,
from
the
this
drip,
little
yeah.
moneymaker right here.
Dripping riches.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. It's unbelievable.
Let me, Mike, I feel like there is a tipping point, and I want to know if historically you feel the same way. And this is because before we started the podcast, I was talking about how my family was sort of 60s and 70s Rockefeller Republicans.
Sure. Yeah. Absolutely.
Supported Jerry
Where'd you
Ford.
grow up? Where was that?
Born in Chicago.
Right.
Then lived in London for 7 years.
Okay.
Then back to New York City.
Gotcha.
After that,
Okay.
then away to boarding school.
Yeah.
So
if you've ever read the book Angela's Ashes, it was nothing like that.
yeah, it was not like that. Well-to-do family, sort of.
You
old money
were
New
one
York.
of the kids that got stuck on the island in Lord of the Flies, but before they went to the island.
Yeah, but I started the chant. And what that led to was, I think, support generally, maybe not so much from my mom, but in the family all the way up through Bush 41, which was sort of the remnants of the old Rockefeller Republicans, I think.
Or the old establishment East Coast.
Yes, the New England-based power base. The sort of old money New York Wall Street crew.
The Thurston Howell Republicans.
Yes, for sure. And that my grandfather dressed eerily like that.
Yeah.
So, my question is, did the Southern strategy, the Haley Barbour sort of Southern strategy push, I'm going to peg it at around 92, that led to, Gingrich and those guys coming into the House.
So the second Southern strategy.
Yes, the second one. But is that the point where things, I feel like that's where things started to shift, and I started to look at that party like, I don't know what my family ever saw in these people. Like, this is...
Well, it's... So,
and then it continued on into Bush 43 and et cetera, and then now into something I don't even know what it is anymore.
Well, to do the incredibly quick history of it, the East Coast kind of old Rockefeller-esque Republicans, we used to have solid Republican New England states. Massachusetts would elect Republican senators.
For sure.
Pretty much dominated the party with some inter-party brawls until 64 when Goldwater and the Western conservatives seized the nomination. Then they went and lost, and there's always a reaction to losing. So then it was kind of this hybrid thing where
and was it that entrenched the New England crew?
Well, they had been, but their grip was loosening. But it was a coalition, so there were different factions. So after Goldwater, then Nixon shows up as kind of a hybrid because he was sophisticated enough in kind of his view and liberal enough on domestic policy to appeal to the Rockefeller Eastern interest. But he was also a Westerner from California. And because he was such an anti-communist, the kind of populist conservatives thought, he's got the right enemy. So Nixon was able to kind of hold it together.
And came up at a time of just chaos and madness in the culture.
Right. Well, that was all happening, there was that law and order reaction.
Right. And people want that. And I think that there's an element of that in the projection onto Trump and the way that Trump is a Rorschach for people.
Oh, definitely.
The world is changing so drastically, so quickly now, that,
he's a protest candidate.
People want people want
a
quote strong man to just protect them and to make things safe.
But
because things are changing so incredibly quickly.
Yeah. Look, whenever
those people should move to Turkey.
Yeah.
They do that there.
Whenever there's disorder, a lot of people go for order. People don't like chaos. But to wrap up your, and they see Trump as an icon of strength and order. It's all crazy.
I'm from Phoenix, or I spent my formative years in Phoenix, and I would always say that Phoenix is the second worst place in the world, and only to Florida. Like Florida is the only state in the union where I have a rule and where I must be getting paid if I go to Florida. I would never go to the beach or go to Miami on vacation.
I'm not going to go to Florida and leave with less money.
I have to be getting paid.
Yeah.
And I suppose, but I never really end up. I drive through Alabama a lot, but we don't play in Alabama a lot. So,
is there? I honestly don't know. Now this is a perfect example of just like elite. And this isn't elitism. I've been to many of our states, and they're all lovely. And you and I have, we were talking about this before the podcast. The most interesting aspects of the conversation always happen before we're recording. I have a certain set of socio-cultural and political beliefs, but I am also acutely aware that not everyone in the country shares my beliefs.
Right.
And that we all have to find a way to get along. But there is a limit. And there are people that exceed that limit. And those are the people to which I go, dude, I don't know what goddamn planet you're on. And that's upper Panhandle, Florida into Alabama and stuff like that. And a lot of it goes back to the Bible.
Indeed. And I drive through this entire country.
The Bible is the user's manual found in the glove box of every ding dong.
My theory for a long time is that nobody really believes in God. But if you can use it to your advantage,
sure,
then you will. And
a lot of people used God as an example. They were pro-segregation because of God. They hate it. God is the best excuse to hate people. And Kevin Rooney said that religion was invented because a monkey dropped a coconut. A monkey found a great coconut, was bringing it home, and there was a thunderclap, and he freaked out and dropped it down. If there is a supreme being, he's not as interactive as we'd like to think. Or he's a real fuckhole, because I don't know if you've looked around lately.
I drive, a lot of times on my tours, I'll fly down to Los Angeles, I'll pick up the van and the gear, and I'll drive out to somewhere where the tour begins. The band will all fly into St. Louis, for instance, or something like that, Austin, Texas. So I'll spend a lot of time, or I'll stop at truck stops often. And, my practice is just not to say anything, but you can be totally aware of that I am not like these people at all.
Sure. Well, you don't look like a truck. You don't look like a truck driver.
No. And
you look a little like Cochise.
well, and I get that sometimes too. Like in Oklahoma, or within the last year, anyway, I got some truck drivers called me Pocahontas.
Yeah,
and I was like, Pocahontas was a woman, first of all, and then he invited me to eat shit, which I did not do.
Yeah. Oh, really? He wasn't affable.
No.
Oh, that surprised me. I actually thought it would have gone the other way.
And we kissed for a while.
Yeah. Well, you know that we all know what he's running away from. That's not even.
But, I'm not physically intimidating to those type of people, maybe, but I'm
spooky,
fairly
enough.
Creepy looking and menacing, probably.
Mm-hmm.
And so I don't get fucked with at these places.
Yeah.
But I'm sure that when I leave, there's either great laughter or maybe relief.
Yeah, it is. It really is a different world. It's a different planet. Now, you were telling me something earlier that I wanted to in Phoenix, and you're kind of I found this interesting. You sort of a gothy kid, or you have a very dark sort of sensibility, as do I, which I think is why we're friends. But Janet Varney is from Tucson,
right? And
she also grew up kind of gothy, which I think it's interesting because you're just in the middle of the desert, and Janet's this blonde. Janet looks like an eagle on an apple pie, got married and had a baby on a flag.
The gothy more in a Krampus kind of way than a Cure kind of way.
Sure.
I don't know about fun, but definitely fascinated. Always been fascinated with serial killers and
sure
and the darker side of things, not
or as I would call it, normal stuff.
Normal stuff. The
famous monsters.
Yeah, and which is we have a lot of common in that way, like just horror movies and I spent, like I said, I spent my formative years in Phoenix. I think I moved there when I was 15 or 16 years old. But before that, I was a military brat, so we lived sort of all over the world.
Oh, okay.
And when I was 9 and 10, we were stationed at Kaneohe Air Force Base in Hawaii.
Oh, okay.
And I think we lived like 3 blocks from the beach. And even as a 9-year-old, I never went to the beach on my own accord.
That's hilarious. I had my 9-year-old cup of coffee, pacing around the backyard.
Yeah, never been a fan of fun in the sun.
Uh-huh.
And that's mostly, when I ended up in Phoenix, that's why I moved to Seattle, because I wanted to be in the opposite of Phoenix.
Right. That's not uncommon.
Yeah.
I grew up in a little gray mill town, and I wanted to live in California. I never even went to New York. I went straight to California.
Even never went to the beach even as a kid. I think the only times I've ever gone to the beach was under protest or perhaps at night. I would go at night. It's just.
But see, that's what I love about the Beach Boys as music, was knowing that they came from such a dark, horrible, gothic place that only an abuse victim could write fun, and sing it so unironically, because they're not celebrating it. They're begging for it.
And I was never really a fan of the band until I learned more about them, and then I realized that these were all screams of terror.
Yes,
out of the box.
Exactly. You're right. Yeah, it's the daydreams of a guy in solitary confinement. It's just great.
And so the more I learn about them, the more I like them. But on paper, as a kid, I would have to file them under things that I wasn't interested in.
Yeah.
But,
The Beach Boys are really entertaining, but the more you know about them, then they become great. The more you learn, like, this guy's deaf in one ear because his dad hit him on the side of the head with a board. Now I'm interested.
And true, as a confession, I really learned, I really didn't start learning about the Beach Boys till after I watched Walk Hard.
Sure.
And I was fascinated with that period of parody in the film. Mm-hmm. Should I call that a film?
Yeah.
Film. Okay.
It's a film.
And then I started reading about Wilson, and it's fascinating.
Yeah, it is. It's completely. It's really fascinating.
And then I saw him at the Star Seeds Cafe in Austin, Texas.
Brian,
during South by Southwest, and he was eating scrambled eggs with his hands, and I thought that was interesting.
It sounds like Brian. I know a friend of mine. I've never met him. I do not know him, but we have friends in common. And a friend of mine really wanted to have dinner with Brian Wilson, and our mutual friend said, "Okay." And he went and had dinner, and the only thing Brian said to my friend the entire meal was, "Can I have a bite of your steak?" Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
politics.
Yeah,
No, but
anyway, so they get to then Nixon sees the conservative white segregationist South blowing up, because originally the Republicans were all the civil rights moderates down there. President H.W. Bush ran as a civil rights moderate congressman once upon a time in Texas, and so. But the populist issues of law and order.
Was Prescott a Democrat or a Republican?
He was a Republican senator from Connecticut. Part of the wing you were talking about.
Yeah.
Right. Yes. That's why I asked. He was an investment banker.
In the 68 election, there's a great book by Kevin Phillips about all this. He was a good demographer and historian of all this. They started to reconstruct, and we started winning southern states. And everything kind of flipped. And then you had more and more kind of white populism in the Republican Party, at least as part of the coalition, particularly social conservatives. We would get pro-lifers, Southern Baptists.
Where are we now? Second term Nixon? Where are we?
Yeah, no. Now we're the McGovern thing was a layup because the Democrats went crazy.
Right.
And so,
thank God we'll never do that
what
again.
Era are you talking? Where are we now?
Reagan. The Reagan coalition in 1980.
Okay.
Again, the Westerners, kind of an improved version of Goldwater. But the Eastern Republican thing was declining, but it was still around, and we had a pretty big coalition, and Reagan kept it together because the gospel of it was essentially a positive view of make the country better. He was tough on the Soviets. He believed in the social conservative stuff. He was pro-life. We built a coalition, just like FDR did, because when you build a big coalition, guess what? You govern. The only time the Dems really did well in the 70s was when they figured out if we can get Southern white Protestants, we can undercut the new power of the Republicans in the South. So Jimmy Carter. And then they did it again with Bill Clinton. That's always their best demographic candidate. What they like to do is nominate a Michael Dukakis, somebody from within their world. Anyway, so what then happened is we had kind of after George W. Bush, all these economic changes coming with technology. We had an unpopular war. We had Republican fatigue. And this populism that you could see, we would knock it down in the party, like in the Buchanan years in the early 90s. But it's about trade. It's about manufacturing jobs. We got this protest inside the party of enough of you guys hanging around bars with lobbyists and DCs running the House. You're not doing anything. You're not being tough enough, believe it or not, on Obama. And we want somebody from outside the DC swamp, to coin a phrase, to come in and sweep it all clean. So this guy shows up who's been on prime time for 10 years showing Gary Busey how to work a snow cone machine, but he's famous as Mr. Can Do. The big thing people liked about him was art of the deal. He can get it done, and he's not part of that thing. So how bad can it be? And even though he acts like a clown in a fright wig, he is super rich, so there's got to be something there. The mythology. Now, we all know.
There's the fault in the logic.
If he had put the inheritance into an index fund, he'd be a lot richer. He's kind of an idiot, actually.
Right.
But,
exactly right.
But again, we've had pop culture take over politics. And the interesting thing, the showbiz corollary, is the country's so big now, and you have to kind of have a lot going. You can't just come out of nowhere. It's much harder. You're a pre-aware title. So you had Hillary, who's a pre-aware title, like Iron Man 6, except it was Corruption 6 more Clintons.
Right.
And you had Trump's pre-aware title, which was clean it out, fix it, strength, can do. Remember, people like to vote for what they think they did not get the last time. So, you had to argue.
So smart black guy.
Exactly.
Right. Well, no, you can take it back to Bill Clinton.
We got dignity. Let's get rid of that.
You had George H.W. Bush, a man I work for and greatly admire, but he's looking at the watch during the debate and everything, doesn't get the middle class, checkout scanner.
And even he was kinder, gentler America, he was sort of like, I'm not as hard as Reagan. Yeah. He had to just.
Well, he went
gave
back to that East Coast kind of social
exactly.
justice.
I mean,
Thurston Howell,
Texas Schmexis. That family was from Connecticut. They were all old money Brown Brothers Harriman investment bankers. He went to Andover and then went to Yale. HW is to me was the
Jethro of the
last
family
gasp.
But then volunteered to get in the Navy, got shot down
out of high school.
Out of high school. That sense of obligation. But anyway, to quickly do the chain with kind of simplified public perception, but he didn't get the middle class. So then we got Bill Clinton, 1 foot in the trailer park. He's plain as us. And then Clinton's, all of a sudden, it's Plato's retreat in the Oval Office. So you get George W. Bush. I'm going to bring honor and dignity back. And then we get on Popular War, and they think this guy talks funny. He's stupid. So we need a genius. So then we went and got the law professor, the brilliant speaker, the erudite, finally high SATs, and, which is kind of, I think Bush gets underrated. But, we got the genius Obama. But what was the rap on him? Too weak. This is a president of the United States who got rolled by the International Olympic Committee. And so when you have the too weak guy, what's the new opposite? Get the hammer.
Right.
He fired Gilbert Gottfried. This guy doesn't screw around. I've seen him on TV.
That'll show you.
And so here we are.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's a hell of a way to run a hyperpower, but
it's
part of it is
it's
our culture merging politics and
It's interesting that it seems like the underlying, so the answer to my question is the underlying, what was always in the party just got stronger.
Well,
to basically say, like, we're sick of you guys doing this.
What Trump has done is this populism, which is concerning to a lot of us. Some of us are more public like me because I'm like a retired general, so I can shoot my mouth off and be troublesome. I still work a lot in issue management and everything, but I don't do direct campaigns. And so we know we've always been a free trade party. We've always been a economic growth, rise everybody up party. We've always been an internationalist party that believed in the Atlantic agenda. And the big heartbreaker for all of us, 48 of these kind of people who think about this stuff, is when Trump sank the Trans-Pacific Partnership, which the left and the right hated as a bad trade deal for China. Well, one, China's not in it. Two, it's a political deal to align a bloc against China.
So we could walk in there with some heft.
And he blew the franchise there. So now what are they all doing? If you're the Australian foreign minister, better learn Chinese.
Yep.
We have screwed ourselves. And so.
And why did he do that?
Because he's a demagogue, and that's where the votes were. And Bernie was in the same place, and Hillary lost her nerve on it too, because they were all pandering to voters.
Right.
Which is, the disease of our democracy. So it is. I'm not sure it's going to change forever. I think we might have the anti-Trump now come along. If I were Mitt Romney, I'd keep in the sun lamp. But this is permanent in these political cycles.
And if you really follow the sports of this, there's a beautiful cock blocking going on there now, which is that the senator from Utah, Orrin Hatch, just turned 1,000,006, and he wants to retire, and Mitt Romney wants to run for the Senate in Utah and would win. And Donald Trump does not want Mitt Romney in the Senate. He doesn't want Mitt Romney to have a growing power base in Washington. So suddenly Donald Trump is flying Orrin Hatch all around the world on Air Force One. My good friend Orrin Hatch, you should run again.
I'm in the middle of some of this, so I have absolutely no comment. But
is what I said completely wrong, or is there a grain of truth in it somewhere?
Let's put it this way. Orrin
Hatch, by the way, Ted Kennedy's best friend.
Yeah, Orrin Hatch is a very nice guy and likes to write songs. He's going to beat the Steve Allen record any minute now. Yeah, he's constantly writing songs. So Orrin Hatch is trying to decide if he wants to run for re-election. He is a very old and wise senator.
Sure.
They're going to put him in charge of the Jurassic Committee pretty soon. And he's deciding, and he may not run. And there's a lot of people in Utah, including a lot of Hatch supporters, including, I think, if he doesn't run, Hatch, though I don't speak for him, that think it would be great if Mitt would serve. And then I think Mitt is evaluating this, trying to decide if he wants to be a senator.
Right.
So there's a lot of stuff kind of floating around in January.
He would be very bored.
Well, but you're right about Trump. You're right about Trump.
Trump does not want Romney to have a power base in Washington, and they don't want him as somebody because Romney won't toe the line on Trump.
Well, it's not just that. Yeah. He would go out there and say, and he would beat the "I told you about the Russians" thing to death.
Yeah. Yes,
if he comes back in campaigns
and he
again,
was right.
That clip of him saying our greatest enemy is Russia. He'd run that thing
Romney,
ad nauseum.
I've worked for Mitt. I ran his race.
By the way, let me say this
right on Putin.
Yeah.
right on Trump. And we Republicans would say right on Obama. So
Yeah.
he's got a good bumper sticker.
By the way,
he would be up.
And he was right about that, and I was
to
wrong.
your anti-Trump argument, a legit rich guy. Like that firm
made the money. Yeah.
No joking in Hoboken.
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
made a ton of dough, and
Yeah.
he was not screwing around. He was one of the founders.
Oh, yeah.
And I tell
he's
you,
a real rich
having
guy.
worked for him,
Those guys are hitters.
he's a friend of mine ideologically. You might agree. He's also Elliot Ness. I mean, he is.
He's
like,
that straight up.
He is straight as a damn arrow, and so he's
Like
so
Bobby
much
Three Sticks.
He's so much the anti-Trump. So we'll see what happens.
Does he wear magic
January is
space
gonna be
underwear?
Interesting.
I think he has to. As
I think we
Mormon.
call that a religious smear in this country, Mr. Gould.
So how did you end up from your military brat, and then you end up in Phoenix?
Yeah.
And how did you? What happened in between moving to? You moved to Seattle just to get out of Phoenix.
Yeah, I mean,
And how did you end up driving Dave Alvin in a van? That's what I want to know.
that is like I sort of was, like I said, I played in a bunch of bands. I was always, although I was always in charge, even if I was unskilled. I think I just learned how to be a tour manager by being one without knowing about it.
It's not that you found the job; it's that the job found you.
Yeah, I was always a tour manager. I didn't even realize it. Before I knew there was such a thing as per diems, I gave everyone $3 for cigarettes every day. didn't know that it had a name or that I had a job title. But
Right.
I was playing in the Dwarves, and I had just turned 30, and I sort of looked at my musical resume, and I had done everything that I wanted to do. I had toured the world, and I had made some records, and I decided then, it's like, well, I'm gonna seek out other means of employment. And I got.
Did you go to college?
I did not. Not 1 second of higher education. So I had some friends in a band called the Super Suckers.
Yeah, sure.
And I had been clean and sober for a couple of years at this point. And I actually joined the Dwarves straight out of treatment center. Not a recommended way to stay clean and sober, but it worked for me.
And treatment center, you didn't. Your drugs of choice were not just your drugs didn't just come out of a bottle.
No, heroin was and is my favorite to this day.
Right. Now let me ask you a question.
Yes.
Heroin. Is it addictive?
I hear they're still doing studies on it, but
and that's what your book is about, which I want to get to. But let's follow this thread, and then we'll circle back.
So I had been on tour with the Dwarves for a couple of years, and clean and sober guy in chaotic situations. So my friends in the Super Suckers, they had a guy in their band who was struggling with the same problem. So they said, they asked me if I would. After I got done with my last Dwarves tour, they asked me if I would come along with them on tour and just hang out and show them how it's done, basically. And so I got back and I went to San Francisco, and I went to the Cow Palace to see the WWF at the time, the wrestling match at the thing. And this is... like I was saying,
what year are we in?
This would have been 1994.
Okay.
And they, people in their reflective moments and late at night, maybe they're considering their lives and often ask the question, like, where did your life go wrong? And I am lucky enough to know exactly where my life went wrong.
And where was that?
That was that night at the Cow Palace.
Because
I had the offer to go out on tour with the Super Suckers. And then I went and I saw The Undertaker versus The Ultimate Warrior. And I thought,
a very historical match.
For a moment, that what I should do is manage wrestlers.
What about that match made you think These guys are improperly managed.
Well, no, it wasn't that. It was just that just seeing the Undertaker, and at the time his signature move was, he would be laid out on the mat, and he would sit up like Jason from Friday the 13th, and it was like, and I said, I need to be a part of this. I can help.
That's fantastic.
And at the time, and I was, like I said, I just turned 30. I knew I could walk down to the ring and find somebody and charm the pants off of them. And even if I was just setting up rings or sweeping the floor for a little while, eventually I would be managing a wrestler.
Uh-huh.
But instead I chose to take the easy path and go off with the Super Suckers and eventually become their road manager. And I'd say that is exactly where life went down the skids for me.
You're already clean and sober.
Yes.
You've managed to do the Herculean task of getting off heroin.
Correct.
And then your life gets bad. And your life gets bad because you didn't go into professional wrestling.
That's my theory, yes. I mean, I have it pretty good now. Uh-huh. But I just suspect it could have been so much better.
Uh-huh. I don't know. I would argue that I would much rather hang out with Dave Alvin than The Undertaker.
Well, to each his own.
Someone, was it you who said this to me? If it wasn't, yeah, you said this to me. It was like, I was talking to somebody today and I said, beautiful day, isn't it? No, I don't know who said it. It was like, I was talking to somebody that said, beautiful day. And they said, everyone's entitled to their opinion.
Mine is, yeah, if you like this kind of thing, sure. That would be mine.
That's fascinating in that, so you think that you would have had a better time in the WWE?
No, I'm just fucking around. I've as many as lucky as I've been in my life, and really I've got to do everything that I wanted to do, and as a kid, if I would have written down the 4 things I wanted to do in my life, it would have been make a record, go on tour, write a book, marry Elvira. And so 3 out of 4 is not bad.
I think you can still, I think the 4th is still open too. I think the 4th you can, it might be a bank shot, but I think she's single.
She will not return my calls.
She was just at Not Scary Farm last Halloween. Let me work this.
Okay. I appreciate that.
You're talking to one of the few people that can actually possibly make this happen.
It's too late for Vampira, so.
Yes, trust me. I can tell you that firsthand.
It's coming. Here it comes. It's intermission time. Time to visit our concession stand.
Welcome to Political Talk with 2 guys from Boston. A working man's look at the socio-political issues of our day. And now, Political Talk with 2 guys from Boston.
This is Political Talk with 2 guys from Boston. I'm Johnny Condon.
Robbie Sullivan here. Good morning.
It's been a while, but
Yeah.
I've been thinking this through. Hugh Hefner died a couple of months ago.
Oh, yeah.
We're still feeling the after effects.
Oh, it hit you hard at first.
You go into denial.
Yeah. You want a smoking jacket?
You want a quadraphonic stereo, and you want to
do.
ask Lee Marvin 20 questions.
Well, and Bill Cosby, for God's sakes, he was the cool one back then.
He was, and that's how you know that Hugh Hefner was never up to any bad. He was hanging out with Bill Cosby.
Yeah, he must have been having.
Gee. But you know how they say when somebody dies, they go, "He's in a better place."
Yeah.
I don't know if Hugh Hefner's in a better place.
Well, he loved it here.
Being the only judge in a 65-year-long blowjob competition, that's a pretty good place. I wonder if he went up to heaven and, hey, welcome to heaven, Hugh. And he's like, hey, nice to see you. I think I'd just like to get my dick sucked in a Pepsi. Yeah, we're not so big on the ick day ucking say up around here. And,
We get you a Pepsi, though.
yeah, I'll get you a Pepsi and a harp lesson. How about that?
It's going to work out fine.
Yeah, I have a feeling that Hugh is up there giving a lot of exasperated sighing,
This is all this is.
hanging out with Lenny Bruce going, it was more fun down there.
But you know what? I don't think he could have even lived in New England.
No,
that
he could
guy
only-
had celebrities and all of it, because in New England, people would have just been like, you can't go over there.
I try to
No one's allowed in that fence.
I imagine him dead, and I imagine him having sex for the last time, and it's the same face. Imagine.
That's rough. I think,
Yeah.
you know that
I will
deal
never-
was
I will
the people
never
that
see-
bought his house.
Yeah.
He came along with it. So that's who killed him.
They bought his house.
It's a whole conspiracy.
They bought his house with a caveat that you can live in it until you die.
Yeah.
So
and
I'm
he
wondering
gets
if
to
like,
live here, but you buy it.
so like they're buying furniture.
Dead a year later.
They're buying furniture and measuring drapes, and he's like, "What have you heard? What have you heard? Nothing. Well, do you know what a reverse mortgage is?
Yeah, I mean, when you come down to breakfast and Hugh's sitting there with his smoking jacket and he forgets where he is, and he's like, "What are you doing in my house?"
Still alive?
Yeah.
Still alive.
Oh, that's right. You bought
Yeah.
the house.
Yeah. That's what a reverse. I wonder if Paul McCartney wakes up every morning, Ringo dead. Like he just wants to. He wants to win so bad.
Wants to be the last Beatle.
He wants to be the last
But
Beatle.
At that point, are you just kind of a bug in a cup and people are pushing you around? You know, you're not really a Beatle anymore. You're a bug in a cup. They're all dead. You're next.
That is a terrible feeling. Yeah. There's only one Beatle left to go, and it's me.
And it's me, and I can't get out of this coffee
It's
cup.
just you and 3 cloaked figures with sides.
And that was maybe, they got to be Beatles here in life, but afterlife, maybe that's it. Some little 6-year-old has you in a cup with a napkin on top of it. And you're his pet.
Oh, that's a beautiful expression. I'm about as happy as a bug in a cup.
I know it's over unless this thing gets
That's
turned
amazing.
over.
That's amazing. Yeah, I'm a turtle on its back in the sun.
That's what it is.
Just
it's
waiting.
Exactly that. There's
But-
got to be 100 of those.
I always watch Perry Mason on MeTV.
Oh, I love that.
I love watch because Perry Mason is everybody on another show that you ever saw. They're always on Perry Mason as a criminal or a MacGuffin. It's like
Leaning into the mic.
Yeah, but it's like I don't know who killed the secretary. It's either Dr. McCoy from Star Trek or Mr. Tate from Bewitched. I'm not sure who did it, but one of them is guilty.
Oh, that's great.
And all the commercials, because it's MeTV, so it's all commercials for old people. So it's like the walk-in bathtub the clap of the walk-in
chair
tub.
coming down the thing.
Yeah, or the ID. I fell.
Oh, yeah.
I fell.
That's the best.
But there's the reverse mortgage is the weird one.
The one that rips the people off.
Well, I guess it's old people sell their house to a bank
until you die.
until you die.
Now no one gets it.
And then the bank owns it.
Yeah.
So it's,
Would you love your last 7 years with some money in your pocket?
but it's always like, if you didn't die, the bank would eventually kill you.
They just take it.
They would just send somebody over to
We're
strangle
taking
you.
the house now. You ran out of time here.
Yeah, I wonder if
I got healthy.
if you live to 150.
When you gave me that money, I went and got nutritionalists, and I started jogging, and I started swimming, and now I'm healthy. I'm going to live to 107. They say.
you
got to leave the house though.
Yeah.
We'll get you an apartment.
If you get to about 140, they just send somebody over there to beat you to death with a bag of potatoes.
Hey, Mom, there's someone at the door.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to feel like. I mean, that's the definition. That's the definition
You
of
have sold your good years.
You are literally
away.
living on borrowed time.
Yeah.
You are literally living on borrowed time.
Everything you once owned is now ours.
Yeah.
In fact, we are sick of you.
And they always make it seem like such a wonderful. You're the old people.
Well, they
They're
even
so
bring in like
happily.
it's not Brimley, but it's one of those guys. They
Yeah,
bring in a
it's
familiar
some old
face.
guy, yeah.
Oh, you know who it was? The presidential candidate that did one of them. The guy. What's his freaking name?
Bob Dole.
No. But similar era. But there was like one of the guys. I know who. I can picture his face, but he was like a senator.
Oh, I know who you're talking about. He was also an actor.
Yes,
he
that
was
guy.
also an actor.
That
yeah.
guy.
Yeah.
Whatever
The guy
his
who
name
talk
is.
like
That's
this.
him.
Yeah, talk like
He
this.
did an ad that was
Yeah.
basically like, all right, I didn't become your president, but let me teach you how to get ripped off in
Yeah,
your later
I
years.
did not become your president, but let me tell you how you can sell your serenity to Wells Fargo.
If you can get a hold of your parents' documents, we can work with you.
Can you forge your mother's signature?
It
We'd
sounds
like to talk to you.
It really felt like that. It's like, do the people above you, the people that you love that are older than you in your family, are they having a hard time?
And do you look at the people who are older in your family the way a lion looks at a guy in a safari hat and he turns into a giant drumstick?
Because you know they're coming.
Oh,
Someone's
man.
getting close. There's family members who are not doing well.
Yeah.
They're still driving a 79 Subaru. And they're going, when does Aunt Tilly leave? I don't know. Maybe we should freaking figure this out.
You are surrounded by sources of income that you are not even taking advantage
Hi,
of.
Aunt Tilly. I just called the phone company and told them I could pay by the 24th. How much time do you have left?
Selling your soul to a bank. Oh, it's grim.
It's tough
grim.
stuff. But if you think about this, one of the most positive things about old people getting ripped off.
Do you know you can eat your relatives?
Well, what about, have you ever get one of these emails? It's like, I'm so sorry to bother you with this, but I'm now in London. Or I've lost all my luggage.
Yeah.
And I need you to send me a check because I know you love me. But it starts out with like the first thing they say is, how have you been?
Does anybody ever, has anyone ever believed that? Has anyone ever responded to a junk email? Has anyone ever responded to one of those? Hello, 5, 4, 3. Hello. Has anyone ever responded?
All I can think is the only people who they end up talking to are the people who, when they go to pick up their phone, they're fumbling with it for like 5 minutes, and then they're like, "Hello."
If
I'm like, "Oh, I got you."
See, I get angry. Here's what I do. I get angry when they call.
Yeah.
And again, and that's
Homeline, it's no one.
And that's, it's no one. And that's also my problem. I'm angry at a computer. A computer randomly dialed.
He's torturing you.
Some person who, can barely afford a Snickers is making these poor calls, sitting there in their good pair of pants.
Yeah. And because landlines are no longer a thing.
Yeah.
If you go to Best Buy, they have two phones. One of them goes like this, bring, 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 bring. And the other one goes like this, fuck you.
Yeah.
Like
Eat my
literally.
shit. Eat my shit.
It's the worst. They're the worst rings. They're not real phones anymore. They don't have like 5 models. There's 2 different crappy ones because it's over. No one gets landlines.
It's all awful. And so what I do is when they call, I will, hello. I'll do a little skit. I go, hi, I'm learning how to play the trumpet.
Oh, nice.
And just keep them going. And just keep them on the phone. And the way my hope is, if I waste enough of their time,
they won't waste others.
They will say, don't call this number. They'll just waste your time. Or they put me in the other thing, like, do you know that giraffes are getting sexually molested in zoos all over the country? Oh, now I got to worry about them.
That's a very strange one. I've never heard that particular
thing.
It
happens because I don't
like picturing it.
They're not looking.
Yeah.
They're
very tall.
One thing you got to say about giraffes, they get their eyes on the they get eyes on the prize.
Eyes on the prize, and that's leaves.
Eyes on the prize.
That's all it is.
It's easy to keep your eyes on the prize when all the prize is leaves.
They're very high because they're reaching for the sun, those leaves.
Oh, Lord.
The sun leaves for a giraffe.
There is that weird feeling, with all, especially because, we're always going in these apartments, fixing heaters and like, they old people, they know more than you. They've experienced more than you.
Yeah.
We give them no respect. They're just in the way.
Yeah.
And they just watch us make mistakes again.
Absolutely.
But then there's the tipping point where they start the downward spiral. And they go and they become children again.
And sometimes the racism floods in.
And
you're like, wait a minute.
They all become.
You haven't made that mistake in 30 years.
They all become Republican. Now, there's nothing to do. I don't know what this is. There's nothing to do. I'm sure we have a lot of Republican. And I don't mean.
No disrespect.
No disrespect. If you were born a Republican and you're a Republican now, I got no problem with you.
We love everyone.
We love everybody.
And also have problems with everyone.
I got to love everybody. I got problems with everybody. Well put. But these people that are die-hard liberals.
It's weird.
And then they
just transform.
And then they transform into Republicans.
As soon as they realize they'll never need, any assistance from welfare, against it.
Or they are, but they don't want anybody else to have it.
Right.
And I think it's, for some reason, they all watch Fox News.
Yeah.
And then you just,
That's what's programmed in. They don't even have the others available to them. They just zone it out.
I have people in my family who would have to get a bank loan to buy a rocking chair. They would have to go down to the fucking credit union to subscribe to Sparklets.
Yes. Well,
But they are pissed off about the estate tax.
Right.
You know, these people that make over that people who make over $20 million a minute have to pay tax on that money, and they're furious.
Yeah. But if you try to talk to them about any issue, they revert back to the words that once were. Like, well, do you know what we called lesbians when you were just a boy? We called them gym teachers.
Yeah.
And you'd be like, that's not good. You can't say that anymore. Don't say that. That's not nice to people who are gay.
Or
and
stuff
it's not
that you
nice
didn't
to
even
gym
know.
teachers. And what are you doing? No.
Yeah.
But actually, after you look back at it, you go, that she wasn't kidding. That wasn't a joke.
Or just, man, we call trans women how do you do's. No, you didn't.
I've never heard that, but I love it.
We call trans women a Mr. Misty Kiss. No, you didn't. That was an ice cream drink.
You know, I think that one of the terms was a confused young person.
A confused young person.
And that was as polite as they could be about somebody trying to find the joy in their life based on who they feel they are.
We have a lot of septuagenarian and octogenarian and nonagenarian listeners.
Something.
Many of our listeners are that old because they're too confused. When we go into their homes, we set Stitcher on their computer to play our podcast, and they're too confused to change it. So we know that we have a lot of captive listeners. And here's my advice. If you're furious about gay marriage, if you're furious about transgender rights, if you're furious about bathroom rights, if you're furious about liberals coming at you, they're crawling on your house like fire ants.
This is what you're thinking about all day long.
Yeah. Here's my advice to you. Practice this.
Let go.
People,
let it go.
Guys are born guys and they're becoming women and using the ladies' room. And now what?
I hope they're happy.
Yeah, I hope God love them.
I hope they're happy.
God love them.
You know, I remember when I hope they're happy sounded like a terrible thing to say.
Can you imagine?
Well, I hope they're happy.
Hope they're happy. You know what? Horses were pissed off when they invented cars. The world, actually, they were probably quite.
I wonder if horses were pissed off when they invented saddles.
Yeah. When a horse invented to say, what, is that for me?
Yeah.
What the fuck is this
Get
shit?
that thing off.
Yeah.
I never had this before.
That's really funny. Horses, deep in their minds, they hate the inventor of the saddle.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
Look at these things.
And that's it's fine.
I like that.
It's not your job to deal with it.
It's not.
The only thing.
I didn't cause this. I can't cure it.
I can't cure it.
So forget it.
There's only one thing that never changes. There's always change.
Isn't that nice?
Yeah.
There's only two things I don't care for. The way things are right now and any kind of change.
Political Talk with two guys from Boston.
They come from miles to enjoy our intermission.
You know Dasher and Dancer and Prancer and Vixen, Comet, Cupid, Donner and Blitzen. But do you recall the most psychologically damaging holiday special of all? Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, a stop-motion carnival of intolerance, which premiered on NBC in 1964, based on the Gene Autry song of 1949, which was in turn based on a children's book from 1939. Rudolph, along with A Charlie Brown Christmas, is one of the most beloved and fondly remembered Christmas specials of all time. But when was the last time you actually watched it? Because when you revisit the show as an adult, it is darker and weirder than a goddamn Fellini film. Rudolph tells the story of Santa's ninth reindeer, who, unlike the other reindeer on Santa's team, suffers a birth defect. His nose glows. But since this is Christmas Town, after all, dedicated to sharing and caring and goodwill towards men, one would guess that everyone is kind and understanding. No.
He's got a shiny nose. Well, we'll simply have to overlook it.
Now, how can you overlook that?
Nice. Well, his parents may think he's a freak, but certainly Santa Claus will understand. After all, he is a saint, right? Saint Nick?
Great bouncing iceberg. Now, I'm sure it'll stop as soon as he grows up, Santa.
Well, let's hope so if he wants to make the sleigh team someday.
Oh, yeah. Wouldn't want someone with a birth defect working for me. I guess you have to be genetically flawless if you're going to drag my fat ass around the globe in a toy-laden sleigh. But that's just the start of it. Eventually, Rudolph's father makes him wear a fake nose to hide his real one.
I don't wanna. Daddy, I don't like it.
You'll like it and wear it.
Oh, but Daddy, it's not very comfortable.
There are more important things than comfort. Self-respect. Santa can't object to you now.
What a great lesson for children. Hide your shame.
You're worse than that wheelchair kid down the street. It sickens me they let him out in public. If he was my son, I'd make him walk.
And the other reindeer are no better.
Stop calling me names.
Rudolph the red-nosed reindeer.
Donner, you should be ashamed of yourself.
That was Santa.
You should be ashamed of yourself. How dare you have a child that looks different? Look at you, Donner. You call that a deer penis? I say it's a freak maker.
From now on, gang, we won't let Rudolph join in any reindeer games, right?
Ugh. Now, where have we heard that level of tolerance before?
And I say segregation now, segregation tomorrow, and segregation forever.
Eventually, Rudolph hooks up with an elf named Hermie, who is also a misfit. You see, Hermie, it turns out, doesn't want to make toys. He wants to be homosexual. But since it was 1964, they used a subtle code.
Someday, I'd like to be a dentist.
Right. Dentist. Wink, wink. Confirmed bachelor. Dentist. We all know the code words. Well, Hermie and Rudolph get fed up with Santa, the reindeer, and the rest of Christmas Town's bigoted pricks. So they do what any self-respecting mutant and his closeted gay dwarf toy-making companion would do. They hit the road, ending up eventually, or perhaps inevitably, on the island of misfit toys.
We're on the island of misfit toys. Here we don't want to stay.
Now, what fever dream produced this segment, we'll never know. But apparently the network thought it provided a great lesson for kids. If you're different, in any way, you should be punished. Even if it's just something mild.
My name is...
Don't tell me. Jack.
No, Charlie. That's why I'm a misfit toy.
Really? Seems kinda harsh. But you do have the wrong name, so maybe you should go live on an island somewhere. You know, like a leper. After enduring this waking nightmare, Rudolph finds himself back home, facing down his tormentors, who present him with an interesting offer.
Rudolph, with your nose so bright, won't you guide my sleigh tonight?
You see, there's a terrible storm. A storm so brutal they want to cancel Christmas. But instead, they're just going to stick Rudolph out front. See, that's the best way to apologize to someone after you've exiled them. First out the door on the suicide mission. Now, one may wonder why Rudolph went along with this deal. Here's clinical psychologist Dr. Jeff Gardier.
Victims of Stockholm Syndrome develop compassion and loyalty towards their captors.
And there you have it.
Okay, Rudolph, full power. Up, 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 and away!
Rudolph the red-nosed reindeer, you go down in history.
Merry Christmas!
And segregation forever.
Flip a coin. According to the law of averages, for every time it comes up heads, it will eventually come up tails. Newton's law. For every action, there is an equal and opposite reaction. For every Sherlock Holmes, there is a Moriarty. For every James Bond, there is a Blofeld. Or a lesbian. For every Batman, the Joker. For every Santa Claus, the Krampus. Yes, the Krampus. Krampus is a mythical beast, the flip side of Santa Claus. Or is he? Described as a long-horned, shaggy, goat-like demon with a long, forked tongue. While Santa is famous for keeping a list of all those naughty and nice, and of course, rewarding the nice, the naughty are left to the tender mercies of the Krampus. According to legend, Krampus would give beatings, whip children with horsehair, then kidnap them and take them down to hell to live for a year. Thanks for ratting me out, Santa. Historians are conflicted as to the origins of the Krampus, but they are in general agreement on the broad facts that, like Santa Claus, Krampus predates Christianity and that he most likely owes his origins to Norse traditions and Christian paganism. However, his origins, at least, have nothing to do with Christmas. Instead, they date back to pre-Germanic paganism. His name originates with the German Krampen, which means claw. And the tradition has it that he is the son of the Norse god of the underworld, Hel. That's the fun German language. I love you is Ich liebe dich. During the 12th century, the Catholic Church attempted to banish Krampus celebrations because of his resemblance to the devil. Another attempt at banishing Krampus followed in 1934 at the hands of Austria's conservative Christian Social Party. Who knew wacky politics came out of Austria in the 1930s? But none of those forces held, and Krampus emerged as a much-feared and beloved holiday force. In Austria, you could attend the Perchtenlauf, or Krampus Parade. The modern-day version of the parade resurrects a centuries-old tradition. Young men in town dress up as the mythical creature and parade through the streets in an ancient pagan ritual meant to disperse winter's ghosts. They march around dressed in fur suits and carved wooden masks, carrying cowbells. The tradition is also known as Krampuslauf, or the Krampus Run. Krampuslauf is having a resurgence throughout Austria, Germany, Slovenia, Hungary, and the Czech Republic, and has gained recognition here in the good old US of A. An interesting thing happened this past year regarding the Krampus celebrations in Austria. Officials considered banning the annual Krampus Run because Austria has recently taken in refugees from Syria and Afghanistan, because they're decent human beings who aren't afraid of their own shadow. Anyway, the local officials were quite justifiably concerned that suddenly having a bunch of drunken Austrians running around the city dressed as goat demons would scare the bejesus out of the local refugees, especially the children. But instead of canceling it, the town officials invited all of the refugee children to a presentation where they showed them the props and the costumes of the Krampus, explained the parade, and invited them to participate. Said one local, "I think it's wonderful they want to get the refugees used to this sort of thing. You can't force people to adopt cultural traditions of which they have no basis or point of reference." It's almost like forcing democracy on people with no history of democracy. Krampus is slowly making inroads into culture in North America. In 2004, he was featured prominently in an episode of The Venture Brothers, one of the greatest shows ever. In 2012, it was featured on an episode of The League. And in 2015, he finally broke through in America with his own movie, when Universal Studios released the comedy horror Krampus, starring Adam Scott, Toni Collette, and David Koechner, that talented boy from just down the street. And I think I speak for all children everywhere when I say, "Oh, Krampus, I love you." Great story if it ends there, right? Well, it doesn't have to for you. Why not go to the library page of DanaGould.com, pick up the film Krampus, or Danny Bland's book, In Case We Die, or any one of a number of things mentioned in this month's episode of the podcast. You can also go to our store at ComedyFilmNerds.com for Dana Gould Hour posters, t-shirts, and, of course, Bevilacqua Heating and Air t-shirts. My album's there, and all sorts of junk. So just go. Thanks.
Make sure you get yours and enjoy it now.
You know, I think Elvis Presley said it best when he said, what he was really saying was, "Here comes Santa Claus." Oh, Santa Claus. Always a tricky figure for secular humanists around holiday time. Because although you want to have your beliefs, you also want to imbue your children with a sense of wonder. You always have those awkward conversations. "Daddy, who's Santa Claus?" "Oh dear, Santa Claus is very important." He lives in the North Pole. And he sees you when you're sleeping, and he knows when you're awake, and he knows if you've been bad or good, and he has a list of all the little girls and boys all over the world, and he knows who's been naughty, and he knows who's been nice. And on Christmas Eve, he gets in his sleigh with his 8 magic flying reindeer, and he flies all over the world, delivering toys to every good boy and every good girl. And he does all of it in one night. And all the presents are there on Christmas morning. That's who Santa Claus is, honey. Well, my friends at school say that we celebrate Christmas because it's Jesus' birthday, and Jesus is the only Son of God. I know, sweetheart, but that's more of a fable, of a myth. You don't want to get hung up in the weeds on that stuff. And even if it is true, one wonders, like so many sweet, innocent children, just who the fuck is Santa Claus? Although everyone knows Santa as a jolly old man with a big fat belly that jiggles when he laughs like a bowl full of jelly, with a long white beard and a red and white fur-lined suit that he wears on the evening of December 24th, when he flies around the world with 8 flying reindeer on Christmas Eve, delivering toys to good little boys and girls all over the world, no matter who or where they are. But this was not always the case. The modern-day image of Santa Claus comes largely from a poem, A Visit from St. Nicholas, by Clement Clark Moore, which many people know as 'Twas the Night Before Christmas. And the final polish on Santa's image came from a very strange source indeed, and we'll get to that in a minute. The origin of Santa Claus goes all the way back to pre-Christian Germany. There was a belief that at a certain time of year, the Yule, the god Odin led what was called the Wild Hunt, which was a distinctly un-Christmassy, ghostly procession through the sky. Odin had a long white beard, but he rode a gray horse through the sky. But it was for their traditional end-of-the-year celebrations. From the Netherlands comes the story of St. Nicholas, later shortened to St. Nick, but known at the time by his native name of Santa Claus. According to legend, Santa Claus would arrive, now get this, every year from Spain by a steamboat. He carried gifts of chocolates and spiced nuts for good little boys and girls during a 3-week period. Santa Claus dropped his presents down the chimney. That's where we get that. But he did it from a massive gray horse, which he rode across the rooftops. Now, Santa Claus, unlike Santa Claus, not only has treats for the good little boys and girls, but he carries a willow cane to punish the bad ones. That's what modern-day Santa needs, a tool to beat and punish the little boys and girls who've been naughty. In Denmark, around the mid-19th century, we start to see folklore about Tomte, who delivered presents at Christmas time. In Norway and Sweden, the spirit of Tomte began to overshadow the existing Christmas tradition, which was, at that time, the Yule Goat. But Santa's direct descendant is St. Nicholas. In fact, he is often referred to by that name. In his earliest incarnation, St. Nick, a serious and somber Christian bishop who delivered presents to children on the evening of December 5th, as it was the eve of December 6th, which was St. Nicholas Day. One of my favorite St. Nicholas traditions is that he would find 3, count them, 3 daughters of poor but pious and religiously observant families, and he would give to these 3 girls a dowry so they wouldn't have to become prostitutes. That's what it says. Hence his original name, Saint Nick the Anti-Pimp. The Christmas celebration moved from December 6th to December 24th during the Protestant Reformation, and was done so that people could focus their attentions on celebrations more about Jesus Christ than on the saints themselves. That is also when St. Nicholas got his name changed to Santa Claus. Now, as I said before, modern-day Santa imagery was cemented by the poem A Visit from St. Nick. And then, in the 1930s, the black leather belt and the fur-lined collar, etc., all came from the holiday advertising of the Coca-Cola Company. So much so that some cynical folks believe that the modern version of Santa Claus was thought to actually have been created by the Coca-Cola Company. Or that Santa only wears red and white because it is the color of a Coke can. Not true. Although it is from this point onward that Santa that we see. Now, modern-day Santa has starred in many movies and TV specials where, with a couple of exceptions like Miracle on 34th Street, he's usually portrayed as something of a dick. And never more famously, and previously reported right here on this podcast, than on Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, where not only is he grumbling and ungrateful,
We are Santa's elves. Ho, 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 ho. We are Santa's elves. Ho, ho.
Well, it needs work. I have to go.
but also something of a masterful asshole. In one of that special's more notable head-scratchers, and there are several, he not only rejects Rudolph simply because of his appearance, but then he berates Rudolph's father for daring to have a child with a birth defect.
Honor, you should be ashamed of yourself. What a pity. He had a nice takeoff, too.
You spend 1/3 of your life sleeping, so you should be comfortable. Casper brand mattresses combine multiple, supportive memory foams for quality sleep surfaces with the right amount of sink and bounce. Casper mattresses provide all the support the human body needs in all the right places. Breathable design helps you sleep cool and regulates your body temperature throughout the night. They're designed, developed, and assembled right here in America, God's favorite country, and delivered right to your door in a small, how-do-they-do-that sized box. You can be sure of your purchase with Casper's 100-night risk-free sleep-on-it trial, with free shipping and returns to the U.S. and Canada. Start sleeping ahead of the curve with Casper. Get $50 towards any mattress purchase by visiting casper.com/Dana and using the promo code Dana at checkout. Terms and conditions apply. But you heard that right. $50 towards any mattress purchase by visiting casper.com/Dana and using the promo code Dana at checkout. I did it, but only on the condition that the terms and conditions applied. And you know what? At my insistence, they did.
Please remember to replace the speaker on the post when you leave the theater. And now, on with the show.
Mitt's one of the most impressive guys I've met in my career, both as a candidate, but also behind the scenes when they come in and
graduated the Harvard School of Business and Harvard School of Engineering the same year.
Harvard
right?
Business and Law simultaneously.
Yeah, that's not easy.
But like
He's
I said,
idiot.
the anti-Trump who runs around screaming about Wharton.
Yeah.
He went to Fordham for 2 years out of NEMA, out of New York Military Academy.
Nobody can.
And then he went to the undergrad part of Penn that is called Wharton. That means you were a business major at Penn for 2 years.
Yeah.
So stop pretending.
But he's the neatest guy in the world, so all this stuff is so manufactured. You know, that's the button
went
on
to
his
Fordham,
head.
buddy. What can I tell you?
Yeah.
Nothing wrong with the Jesuit education.
And what is interesting is that what we're not talking
don't tell
about.
everyone you went to Wharton.
I'm a Georgetown guy, so I have to get that in. But no,
I'm
you're
not
totally
knocking on
right.
that.
You're totally right.
And like I said,
But what is interesting
like
is-
I said about Mitt, he is actually he is a hell of a businessman. Like the guy is a hitter in business.
But we're not talking about the Democrats, which is interesting.
No, we're not.
Because
we're just talking about the anti-Trump version of the Republican Party.
The Democrats now I'm trying to find the analogy. It's almost like it's like the Republican Party in 1966. We don't know what the hell's going on.
Well, but the nomination is worth having, so if 200 people are running.
Yeah. But
Right now,
nobody, 200 people and no one excited.
except Al Franken. He's the first to go.
That was surprising and sad.
I'm not sure he's going to resign, by the way.
He might. Well, he didn't. He might not resign. I do. Did Kristen Gillibrand demand that Trump step down?
At her best, she's a pioneer in an issue that we got to address because the Congress has been, a lot of hands-on leadership there.
Yeah.
On the other hand, I think she's studying her French Revolution history and has a little whiff of Jacobin territory.
Yeah.
And, I'm still getting crappy. I got all this shit from Meet the Press on Twitter. Because can I tell my Meet the Press Twitter?
Please. Oh, please.
I'm going to alert you.
Wait a minute. Are you telling me that someone on Twitter is Twitter now being used for political arguments?
A little bit. And, I don't care. I often try to provoke discussion there, but I'm going to shove us into the awkward territory of three white guys talking about sexual harassment.
Right.
But it came up on the thing, and I'm sitting there on the round table, and next to me is the esteemed historian Doris Kearns Goodwin, who's a good person. I like her. And Chuck asked her a question, and she answers with the appropriate kind of, scolding about how bad things are. And then for some reason, Chuck goes to me and said, "So what about Hollywood? Boy, it's really different out there." And, but he's trying to give me an angle because Doris has handled it. So I make the mistake on Sunday morning television of going for the joke. And I put my hands up like this and I say, there's a lot more coming. It's bad. In fact, I'm wearing a straitjacket around town just to be safe. Mocking myself, I thought.
Didn't Doris touch your arm and you were like, Doris, don't touch me?
Doris, who's got a great sense of humor, gave me a big horse laugh and tapped my arm.
Right. And you were like, Doris, don't touch me.
And I went for the second joke, which is, Doris, I got lawyers. Careful there, you frisky thing. Big laugh. It was all fine. But then on Twitter, some women were really offended that I made a joke about sexual harassment in Hollywood. Like, I don't take it seriously.
That's tough. That's tough for them. The sun's going to come out tomorrow.
I started doing Gilbert Gottfried Japanese stuff, retweeting. Really,
there is, but that whole angle it's a tsunami of awareness, and I've never seen anything in my life to hit like this.
Yeah, it's only starting.
Yeah.
Well, to your point, by the way, earlier, because I wanted to ask you one more thing about Mitt. Here's something you'll never have a problem with Mitt Romney on.
Right.
Oh, totally.
This ain't happening.
I'm telling you.
Or Barack Obama.
His dad was governor when you were growing up in Michigan?
Let's see. I have to. I wasn't sentient.
Or he was running.
I was like a toddler, but no. He was my parents
ran
loved
American
him. They were
Motors.
both labor Democrats.
Yeah, no, I know him.
Invented the small fuel efficient car.
That's right.
And got laughed out of the business for it, but saw the future.
And my old car.
Ran for president too.
And created my old car.
George Ron, would you say Mitt would represent a return? And I keep going back to this, but a sort of Bush 41-ish, because you know his policies and I actually don't.
Mitt is more conservative than his dad.
Okay.
But Mitt, I think beyond kind of the Republican spectrum, he's more in the internationalist, George W. Bush Sr.,
he understands the planet as a businessman. He knows the market.
He's also a massive leap back to something that's generally good in American presidents in a tricky time.
Which is what?
Competence.
Yeah. Amen.
Knows the world. Who do you want sitting across from now our Chinese dictator for life, Xi? Trump saying, "Will you please compliment me? Please, am I pretty?"
I made ties
or
here.
Mitt Romney, who might switch into Chinese. So we're up against a team. Here's my statistic to send all the listeners home with. If you are so good at computer science, or so good at chemistry, or so good at any intellectual pursuit that you are legitimately super brilliant. You are so brilliant that you are literally 1 in a million people. There are 1,400 of you in China.
Yeah.
Yeah. And meanwhile, we got a guy spraying orange, spray paint on his hair looking for compliments.
Yeah. And it's scary.
Yeah, the minute they can write a decent joke in English, we're all going to be
done.
Yeah,
working at the Burger King serving Yankee burgers.
Well, there's plenty of Burger Kings over there, by the way.
Yeah. That's our way to get even with them because they don't have much of a healthcare system.
Exactly.
So
we're going to fatten them up just like Americans.
Bring them down. Yeah.
You were talking about being a Meet the Press when they talked about this. Yeah, it is.
I mean, nobody on Meet the Press, they thought it was funny, but then the Twitterverse.
Oh, no, it's
and I tried to be sensitive to it because I thought, all right, if I was offending some women about it, I didn't really mean to. And so my tweet back was, hey, the tougher the issue, the more the joke is needed.
Yeah, exactly.
You know,
I'm sorry, I'm from and this is again 3 writers sitting around talking about it, but I believe the joke wins. And even if that joke dies, it was a joke.
Yeah, and what are you going to do?
You're not allowed to police it.
Yeah, no, I have no tolerance for that. And if their outrage will be over in 7 hours, so you'll be fine.
Well, luckily, somebody else will outrage them more.
It's just a.
So let me ask you the Franken question, though, because there's a theory going around that I think if you parse his statement, which was inelegant, there should be an apology, but he was basically saying, I will eventually resign.
Look, it's clearly the Democrats need something, and to have a clearer shot at the Republicans, they want to say, we don't tolerate this within our ranks. And over on this side, you've got an admitted sexual predator in the Oval Office and a pedophile. It's like, and I don't care that 107 people didn't line up their stories.
Yeah.
Because of globalists.
Yeah.
This is, and he was banned from a mall, and that's not a rumor.
Go 30,000 feet for a second, and I want to ask you this strategically because it's what you do successfully. Positioning yourself as the arbiter of moral rectitude in the business of government seems like a loser to me.
It's always
in other words,
very risky
if the
place.
Democrats are going to the place of, we're going to kick every one of these guys, whoever did this, out of the building, you're going to have an empty building.
I think this is, I don't think
but
that's
you're
what
going to
they're
be able
doing.
to stand on the morality of only having 2 people on your side.
No,
what
I think they're doing is trying to go to women. Who do you want to vote for, ladies?
No, but Mike,
what they're thinking,
not
which
gonna
is
work.
Well, I don't look. I would have loved to have been a fly
It's like
on
when
the
they
wall.
took down Henry Hyde. They were like, "Oh, you want to say that about Clinton?
Yeah.
That guy right there."
I would have loved to have been a fly on the wall when Chuck Schumer sat down with Al Franken and said, "So the term of art is human shield. We're going to use you to plow through a minefield to create a bigger hammer to win more elections."
Have you been in a political calculus before? Because you are now.
It's my idea as Senate leader, Schumer, that you, Al Franken, should die for the cause. How do you feel about that? And then the carpet starts
Everyone
moving toward
take
the
one
door.
step forward.
Everybody,
not you.
You have now volunteered.
You didn't go to college.
No.
But you're a published author. Those, by the way, those are wholly unrelated.
Correct.
The reason I'm asking that question is, what had you written? You have people who are looking for a great read, especially to give to people for the holidays or start your new off. In Case We Die is the name of your book.
Correct.
It came out a couple years ago.
Right.
And it's basically a roman à clef about your time in rehab, although it's fictionalized account. Draws on that world,
right,
and those experiences, and tells a different story, a generational story.
Well, yeah, I mean, really, it is the In Case We Die is a love story that that a porn shop serves as the background for, so it's like I wanted to write a love story and I had to make it but I had to entice everyone in to read it. So,
right.
And really at the time, in the early 90s, that was my life. I worked the graveyard shift at a porno shop in downtown Seattle. So midnight to 8 o'clock in the morning, if you were looking for a dirty magazine or a videotape, then you came to me.
I did not know this.
Yeah.
And it's so funny when people tell you something and a song will cue in your head. All I heard in my head when you said you worked midnight to 8 a.m.
Yes.
In a porn store in Seattle.
I see trees of green, red roses too.
You get a lot of guys looking at their shoes, scratching their face a lot.
You get, the parade of...
You met a lot of comedians. I'm telling you right now, you met a lot of comedians.
Maybe Well, it was an interesting shift to work because, you come in at midnight and there were girls dancing in the back in booths, like in the Madonna video.
It was a real place, wasn't it?
Oh yeah. And, so until.
Is this the place across the street? The Showbox Theater used to be the Improv.
Really?
Yeah. In the early 90s.
Huh.
It was for a brief shining moment, the Showbox Theater was the Improv. And one of the waitresses also worked at that place.
Right.
And she had a glass eye. And the guy that I was working with went and saw her. We were all going to meet later at the Cafe Cyclops.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember telling this guy, because he'd struck up a friendship with this young lady, and he was going over to her other place of employment after the show. And I said, well, tell her to meet us at the Cafe Cyclops. And he said, if you think I'm going to go tell a stripper with a glass eye to meet me at the Cafe Cyclops, you're out of your fucking mind. And it was one of the funniest things I've ever heard in my life.
What a perfect story for Tom Waits' birthday.
It really fits. It really fits. It's ground level. You're at ground zero for a lot of people.
Exactly. And, that was the great thing about the job is that nobody else wanted it.
Yeah.
So I could, I was playing in some bands at the time, so I could go off on tour whenever I wanted for a couple of weeks. I wasn't in the kind of band that went on tour for a year or a month, but I could disappear for a couple of weeks, 3 weeks, and my job would always be waiting.
Sure. Yeah.
And if I showed up intoxicated, it's midnight. No one cares.
Yeah, no one cares.
As long as the place is still there in the morning, I did my job.
Do people at that level, do people still make excuses like, these are pretty stupid, I guess I'll buy them, it's a gag gift.
It's all the time.
4 a.m. on a Tuesday, dude. Just pay for them and leave.
Yeah, and and businessmen all the time, businessmen come in and they won't use their credit cards. We did take credit cards back then, but everyone's paying in cash, and it made it super ripe for embezzlement on my part. I could show up loaded. I could stay loaded the entire time. To me, it was the perfect job, and I think that much sleaze, and there are TV monitors with porn blasting on it all the time, and my senses just became numb to everything.
Absolutely.
And in retrospect, it was a very unhealthy environment.
In retrospect,
but at the time, I did not recognize that.
Time has given you the gift of objectivity.
Exactly. And I don't know how it affected me emotionally or anything like that. Or
well, you do. I would think you just get desensitized to the whole thing.
And it was people who drug addicts and people who work in that kind of environment have developed skills that later on in life, if used for good, can be, because if you're going to shoot $100 worth of heroin every day, you have to learn some manipulation skills. They're and you can use those for good, or you can use those for evil later on.
No one is more charming than an addict.
They have to be, they have to be. So, and that's why a lot of people fall for that, and they think, oh, he was such a nice guy, or he's so charming. It's like, yeah, because he's had to develop that skill in order to get your money to get his drugs.
Fix, right?
Yeah.
And he'll be charming until he has to slit your throat.
and that's what that's Charlie from the book. He's the perfect example of that.
Right.
Although, at the same time, many drug addicts can be sweethearts to their core, and drugs changes your behavior, but doesn't really change that. I would say. Champ Arcade was a big store. It was almost like a small supermarket of magazines and videotapes and assorted toys and outfits and things that, everything that you could get. And then you walked in the back of it and there was a really dark, seedy hallway which had booths on it that you could either go watch movies. You could enjoy a glory hole if you were looking for that. You could.
Now let me stop you right there. Does anyone really enjoy a glory hole? It just seems like something you grind through. It's just a gnawing need that you got to go through.
You and I may not have the daredevil gene that it takes to enjoy a glory hole.
The genital Knievalism.
And we're done.
Yeah, there's just an innate idea of like I'm gonna stick my dick to this hole. There's something on the other side that I don't know about. Here's what I go right to. I have in the morning.
Yes.
You might have saw this, Danny, in my kitchen. I like a nice shake in the morning. I make myself a little smoothie in the morning, and that's my breakfast. And I have a special blender with 3 blades on it that go up. And that's all I think of. Best prank ever.
Ooh. Well, and it just occurred to me this moment, like really, like earlier I was saying that my theory that nobody really believes in God. But perhaps those who go to glory hole have the kind of faith.
There's a level of faith that is definitely required.
Yeah. And as much time as I've spent in that kind of environment and as many terrible things as I've done in my life, that sort of thrill seeking has not appealed to me yet.
I like that you're holding out the realms. There are many, many colors in the human palette.
Correct.
And I get the tactic because they want to be pure to hammer on Trump. But in their world, there's a backlash a little bit now. And there's a schism. So on one hand, you have Gillibrand and some of the people who think we have to have zero tolerance and send a real strong signal. And then you have kind of the incrementalists, which was, well, let's put them through the ethics committee and do a real investigation. Because there's all this internet stuff on Land Tweeden now and everything, So, to your question though, it is impossible in practical politics and most human activity to be completely pure.
Yeah.
So they have to, and they've already have the Trump stuff. It's not like you can shame this guy out of office.
No, there's nothing you can bring out on him. There's nothing you can bring out on him.
But if you can't get him with the Access Hollywood thing, you're not going to.
But back to the numbers though. I mean, yes, he won by a eyelash of votes.
78,000, I think was the number you said?
78,000 margin out of 13.9 billion people in those
spread out
states.
Over how many states?
3. Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin. It was a hiccup. You have that election today, he loses. But
I wish I believed that.
No. See, well, he's got the Rasputin.
I just see 2020 landslide. But this
is what's happened to the liberals and a lot of the media. It's the Rasputin factor. Well, we poisoned him 3 times and he didn't die. He's immortal. He's got everybody bluffed. New poll out, good poll you can believe from Pew. Not a low-budget newspaper poll or an ideological poll.
Sacramento
He's down to a
poll.
25% approval rating with women. I mean, it's unbelievable. And among this is
but
the
to me,
key
there's
number.
25% women support him.
Yeah, remember, it's 48.5 to 50 to win.
Yeah.
Among white evangelicals, Protestants, or I think all evangelicals, even some Catholics, used to be at 78% approval, down to 61. So I'm just telling you.
Well, he's
like a Bitcoin bubble.
Yeah.
I think blockchain is going to be
just
huge
as
forever.
Much transparency.
But the invincible Trump thing, I don't believe he will be reelected. I don't even think he's going to run for reelection. I say this as the guy was wrong about him winning.
Yeah.
But
well, I think one possible scenario, and then I want to talk about what's going on in Alabama. One possible scenario is he has to pardon Don Jr. so Donnie Jr. doesn't go to prison. And that evaporates his political capital, and he steps down for the good of his family.
Well, that's the leverage. The theory is they get his kids in something.
I think Don Jr. is
or
being
even
fitted
they get
for
him
an orange
sideways.
suit.
Remember, they got Manafort on like tax stuff.
Fredo's going to go fishing.
Yeah. He went Capone style.
Yeah, there's a reason that Trump's tax returns are the biggest secret in the world, to the public. So,
Can they get them? Can
Mueller can get them?
Can Mueller get them? Turns out that MAGA meant Mueller ain't going away.
No. They can absolutely get him. Special counsel.
I had the character building experience of having some FBI jackets show up at my office once in a campaign I was involved in.
Oh, yeah?
And then I got to meet a grand jury,
Really?
which was a bunch of people reading like Harlequin romances and yawning. And the lawyer told me on the way in the room, they can indict a ham sandwich.
Yeah, that's the whole thing.
I was not the target, but it was an investigation of a campaign I worked on. And I got over a 6-month period to taste the overwhelming investigative power of the FBI because they throw 500 people at it.
Right.
When I was interrogated by my now friend Mike Chernoff, who was the U.S. attorney, he was waving my phone records around, waving faxes that had been sent from my house that he had. It is. When they look at you, they see everything. So I would say, I don't know where it'll go, but I believe Mueller is the best in the business. He has nearly unlimited resources. And so imagine the Star Wars garbage compactor. Trump has legal pressure coming one way, and these lousy poll numbers and Republicans being afraid to be seen with them in some swing states, the Virginia loss, he's got that wall coming the other way. So he is in both political and legal jeopardy. Where it goes, my crystal ball is cracked.
Right.
But he's got bigger problems than anybody in that job since Nixon, and his numbers are worse.
And it happened faster. It took Nixon 5 years.
Yeah, and he did it to himself. That's the other thing. He constantly puts his finger in the electric socket.
Yeah, well,
and everything else.
Don't you think if you're Rasputin, you don't care?
Yeah, but the thing is, you could behead Rasputin. Rasputin got killed.
No, ultimately they got him.
Yeah.
I wonder if it will be like this sort of sexual harassment awareness that the tipping point will come. As I was talking about the 100th monkey syndrome, where everybody has the same idea at the same time, that people go off him all at once. I think it's going to. I think that he would. I can envision a Saturday Night Massacre event where he fires Mueller and pardons Jared and Don Jr.
Sure, could happen
on the same night. But that, I think, would be the end of it. I think that he would.
I don't know. Let me put it this way. He is capable of just about any thing like that, but we'll wait and see. See. He's not completely irrational. He has his own kind of animal spirit instincts that he follows. And clearly this Mueller thing drives him completely batshit crazy. So,
well, it's honestly the first time in his life he's ever been held accountable to anything.
Yeah.
Except a banker.
Well, yeah.
And that didn't work out so hot.
Yeah.
No.
No one wanted to give him any money.
Yeah.
Hence.
Yeah, that's one of the big Jerry
star.
questions is there offshore money? And then, we do know there's a whiff of borscht to the whole thing now. I mean, that's not controversial.
Well, look, the Deutsche Bank thing is not a surprise to anyone who has any understanding of his businesses in New York and the bankruptcy of the casino business.
Yeah.
If you know all that, and they put some chart up on I think it's CNN or MSNBC the other day of which banks have loans to him. There are no U.S. banks anymore because those guys collectively said, you've gone under so many times. We're going to have to eat this $980 million on the casinos. We're not loaning to you anymore. And that was
his credit.
That was J.P. Morgan. That was Merrill Lynch. That was Morgan Stanley. They all said we're not loaning to you anymore. Deutsche Bank will loan to you, but it's not really their money, if you know what I mean.
Right.
It's largely a clearinghouse.
Right.
For the
and
Russians.
those people don't like to be welched on.
No, but it's a not U.S. based bank.
Right. Yeah, no, it'll be very interesting. And, so again, by the time this airs, drops, we will know who the new senator from Alabama is. What I find interesting in Alabama is it's going to hinge on abortion. Basically where they're going is Roy Moore is against abortion and Doug Jones wants to murder your baby.
It's a pro-life state, so.
Yeah. And Roy Moore's bumper sticker is you can't molest an aborted child, which I think is true. To which he said, hold my beer.
I thought it was y'all. I thought it was y'all don't worry, the Senate ain't a mall.
Exactly.
Oh, man.
But that does, like, when you talk about like another, what I say to that is stop sending me whatever your name is, Cecile Richards or panicky Planned Parenthood emails every day. abortion will never be illegal because the Republican Party needs it to terrify you into voting.
That's a unified field theory that I don't really believe. The abortion won't be totally illegal because the Supreme Court has ruled. Mm-hmm. The Republican Party is both pro-life and pro-choice. It has both parts. The pro-life voters are more numerous, so they have a larger influence. The Democratic Party, with the exception of guys like Casey in Pennsylvania, is almost all pro-choice. So where I agree with you is both parties have well-oiled machines to fight over this issue, but it is unlikely the outcome will change.
Yeah, but I do think that there are, in the case of the Roy Moore campaign, thank God for abortion, because that's all he has.
Well, yeah, no. I've worked down there. And the truth is, I like Alabama. I know some of the coolest people in my life. I mean, I have a long Alabama connection in history. Which is why I'm not sure Doug Jones is going to lose, by the way.
That's the other thing.
I was looking, Birmingham is pretty solidly against Roy Moore, or the burbs around.
But I also think it's going to be. It could also be like the Virginia race, where like the news business, as you like to say, is that it's neck and neck, and then they call it, and then they call it at 5:30 for Jones. Yeah, turns out it wasn't. Thanks for tuning in.
The battle you've got is between normal political gravity, where it is an overwhelmingly Republican state, and the fact that Roy Moore is such an epically flawed candidate. So can everything get warped? So how would it work? What unnormal has to happen?
Yeah.
Well, one, you've got to have a huge Democratic turnout, like you saw in Virginia in the governor's race. There's something in the water, not hard to figure out what it is.
Other than Birmingham, where are they?
Yeah.
In Alabama.
Here's a little Alabama trivia. Let's say we were all on a ridiculous reality show, and you guys have to get on one plane and meet a rocket scientist in the old Confederate South. You have 20 minutes, and we have no time to research it. Huntsville, Alabama. Up to your neck in PhDs and rocket people. They're a big NASA thing. That's where the engines are really designed. Mobile, Port City, kind of like New Orleans, a lot of Catholics, a little more tolerant. South of Birmingham, and Tuscaloosa over a little bit to the west, but south of Birmingham, it's boomtown, a lot of Republican suburbs. You might even be able to find a Trader Joe's. You guys would feel right at home.
And my assistant would feel right at home.
Exactly. What is that again? Oh, a store.
So the swing votes are going to be big Democratic turnout, particularly African Americans.
Right.
They got to show up huge.
Yeah. Which they didn't in Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania.
Yeah, a friend used to teach at Auburn. That's a college town. He says he can't find a Roy Moore yard sign there in the street. But second, you're going to need suburban Republicans to not show up anywhere near normal, or not vote anywhere near normal.
Or show up and not vote.
Yeah, and I think there will be some silent people who vote no. Now, I do think Judge Moore has had a pretty good couple of days here, because Trump is putting a finger on the scale for him, and Trump is popular down there.
Right.
And once again, one of the rules of life is nothing good comes from Gloria Allred.
I agree with that 100%.
Absolutely.
She got out the
including
marker.
her daughter.
So now they have something to close the race on, which is the big forgery put up against Roy Moore. So
I agree with that
put a
100%.
gun to my head. I think, most people think Moore will edge it out.
So when I worked there, I kept a notebook of different characters or people or stories that I would encounter, and with the thought that this will be a great book one day.
Right.
And I put that aside for many years, decades, in fact, and I started writing just about that aspect of it, and then I met this woman, Amy Ferris, who was the violin player in Dave Alvin and the Guilty Women, and I fell for her immediately, and she was an amazing person with a dark side. Mm-hmm. And this, she had suicidal thoughts since she was a young child, and we talked about this a lot, and I heard about her life and about the voices that she heard, and I started to incorporate that into the story. And then in 2009, she committed suicide.
Mm-hmm.
And I say finally because it had been on her agenda, on her itinerary for her entire life.
Right.
And it was kind of, in her mind, it wasn't a matter of if, but when.
Mm-hmm.
So
now for that, do you think it was the lid to the kettle, in the sense of when eventually this pressure is going to become too great and I'll just pop the lid off?
Yeah, I mean,
because I've had friends that took their life, and I always would say you can't apply rational thoughts to an irrational person.
No.
But this sounds like it was a pretty rational.
Well, I think she stuck around for a long time because for other people,
Mhm.
you know, and I like to think that I was one of them, and, you know, and her parents, and for the people that she played with, and so I consider that time that I knew her as to be a favor to me.
Mhm.
And having never had a suicidal thought in my life, which is a strange thing for someone who was, you know, a junkie for more than a decade,
Mhm.
you know, as self-destructive as I have been, or as I was, that thought never occurred to me. I never wanted to die. And so I don't know the kind of pain that drives you to that.
Right.
I don't understand the kind of pain, but it's a very real thing. Obviously, I mean, with her, you know, in her circumstance, she was insanely talented, incredibly beautiful, and had many things going for her. And like, it's hard to make sense of. I mean, Chris Cornell is the same thing, you know, like I mean, if a man had everything in this world, it was him, but it's not enough.
Right.
So, you know, as the world sort of has embraced, you know, my particular demons, you know, addiction as a disease, and now we sort of know what to do when we encounter someone who has that, where, you know, 25 years ago when I first got sober, it really wasn't quite that way. It was still, you know, looked upon differently. But now we need to make the shift to those mental health issues, you know, to depression, and start, you know, we all know as a community, as a civilization, that it's a disease, but we're so fucking scared of it, you know, that we don't know what to do, and it seems impossible.
Mm-hmm.
And
it's also, I think, a lot of it's just weird. It's viewed as a weakness,
right?
But if you die of lung cancer because you smoked all your life, that's just shame. We can't cure cancer yet.
Yeah, and you know what Mitch Hedberg said, that alcoholism is the only disease you get yelled at for having. And depression is,
that's amazing.
Yeah, depression, and the what I learned in my experience with Amy about depression is you know, I listened to her and I believed her, you know, and and when she told me that her time in this earth was limited, I believed her and chose to live or spend the time that I had with her just like it was a temporary thing.
Mm-hmm.
And it was beautiful in its way, you know. I wish that she was still here, but but that experience, you know, that experience of like, this can only last a certain amount. I mean, it was, I don't know if it wasn't liberating, but it was, I haven't experienced anything like it since, and I can't imagine it again, but it was real it was real in the most permanent way, the way it has affected my life. And some people might think of it as scarring, but I think of it as a experience that I wouldn't have traded.
I know people that are really wealthy and well off, and not friends of mine, but people I've encountered in my life.
Right.
And they're about 1/8 of an inch deep, and they just care about money and success and the trappings thereof, and golf.
Who could you be talking about?
And they're made of the same stuff as Amy, genetically.
Right.
And it just seems that some people are just sent in the world to feel more than others.
I believe that.
And 9 times out of 10, it doesn't make them happier. It's the more you feel, the more the more stuff that gets in. The highs are higher and the lows are lower.
Yeah. And I don't know. Yeah, and I think I feel things on a different level, but I have a way, through writing, I have a way to deal with that. But I don't know. Maybe it's straight out of being desensitized from working at the Champ Arcade. But I don't feel things the same as deep.
Yeah.
As some people do.
Yeah. Well, you have a nice padding to your break. It's like, yeah. I know that. Yeah.
Maybe too nice. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you just get that. After a while, you just I don't know if you become desensitized or if it just all the thrill goes out of it. Yeah. We're all gonna shit the bed at some point, as my dad would say. Before I shit the bed. Did you have any experience writing? Like who literally edited your book? And like in terms of like the structure of a novel, the grammar.
Yeah.
My grammar's awful.
I've been a snobby book collector my whole life. So, and I love books. I have walls of books, and I only have hardbacks. I only have first editions, and many of them signed, and I adore them as for the words in them and the smell of them and everything. So I'm in love with books. But really when Amy passed, then it became a mission. I wanted to tell her story before it was too late, because I know that I know that sitcoms have damaged us and we only have a certain amount of attention span left. So it became, an important thing to like I had been working on the book for a long time. I don't even know how many years casually. And then it became a daily routine and something that I was I had saved a bunch of money from working, and I was going to put the book out myself. I got lucky and Fantagraphics did it for me.
Right.
But that story was going to be told no matter what. Yeah, it really was just the urgency of telling a story. I was possessed by it, and it had to be done.
Yeah. That eventually it takes over, and there's a beautiful moment where the characters start to write themselves, and you just kind of follow it.
And I did not. The kind of structure that the book had was I knew what the beginning was, and I knew what the ending was, and that was it. And I just let the rest happen, and that's the enjoyable part of writing, is like, let's see what happens today.
Right.
And I'm working on another novel now. It's the same formula. I've started it. I know how it ends, and I'm filling in the middle right now. And for the last couple of years, I've been out on tour over 300 days a year, so I haven't had a lot of time to work on it. But
right,
and when I finished In Case We Die, and I was used to a strict regiment of writing every single day, and all of a sudden that was done, and I kind of was going a little bit crazy. That's when I started writing haiku.
Mm-hmm. And every day you wake up and you write.
Well, there is a writing exercise that that people do where they write a haiku a day for a year.
Mm-hmm.
And so I just started doing that, and I posted them on Facebook without explanation. So the funny thing was, it took people a while to figure out what I was doing. But in the meanwhile, I got notes from like relatives and friends like, "Are you okay? We're concerned about you."
The other Trump thing that I think is allied to this is the death of kindness. I get the constitutional law argument that a gay couple wants to buy a cake from a guy. Guy says, I'll sell gay people cakes, but I don't believe in that marriage sacrament, so I don't want to sell cake. So they drag him to court. Now, I think they're probably right on the law, but there's a furiousness to it. Look, give the guy a break. He'll sell all the cakes in the world to all the gay people in the world. He just doesn't want to sanctify the marriage.
Right.
You can be right on the law and show a little kindness. Do you really drag his ass to the Supreme Court over it?
Right.
This is my independent, Angus King is my kind of guy type of issue, wherein I feel, go to another shop.
Right. That's
there
what I'm
is
saying.
Another cake shop.
Yeah.
Just go someplace. He doesn't want to sell you one.
Yeah.
Take your money. Vote with your dollars. Take your money and go to another shop. This guy is not Da Vinci with, the, cream that they put on top of it.
If he's got
just go to another store
everywhere and he says you're gay, get out of my store. That's a different deal.
It's not the Westboro Baptist Church.
Yeah, right.
He doesn't want to sell you a cake. There's another cake store in town.
If a government,
go get your cake someplace
Well, they
else.
look at it as an extension of if a government clerk doesn't.
And like you, I'm sure they're right on the law.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, go
Well,
get your cake someplace
I think this scene is a branch of like if a government.
By the way, that's different from that idiot woman who won't sign the license.
Oh, totally.
She works for the government. She has to sign.
Look, and I get the legal case. He can't deny commerce and all that, but the discrimination was not to their sexuality. He didn't have trouble selling cakes to gay people. He just didn't believe in gay marriage.
Yeah.
So the question is, do you really get out the legal chainsaw and behead the guy, or do you say, we disagree, we're on one society here.
Right.
There's another cake store down the way. Recommend one to me. We are not a nation of categories of people. And so this identity politics thing, where like, I've got to check my gene code before I vote. Let's see, I'm a Catholic guy from the Midwest, so I got to vote for O'Flanagan. It is not what the country is built on. And when we get into all this typism, as an Asian American, I can only support Asian American issues.
Right.
It's insane. And it is corrosive on the country.
That was
the Trumps of the world thrive in it because you get warlords for each thing, and then they use politics to fight. And then, we balkanized our national identity.
But wouldn't you say that failed for Hillary, that women did not block vote for her?
Yeah,
and say, as a woman, I have to support this woman. They didn't.
Yeah.
And hence she lost.
That was the flaw of the Hillary campaign, I think. If I saw another ad with a bunch of telegenic 11-year-old girls with their hand on their heart looking up adoringly, she had all that vote for free. The question is, if you were
she didn't get it.
White working class woman in watching food stamps go through a checkout line somewhere, you didn't think she was on your side. You thought she was caring a lot more about bathrooms somewhere, as opposed to bending metal here in Ohio, where my husband just got laid off again.
Right.
So, her inability to communicate is kind of on her. I do think I've run a lot of campaigns for and against women. There is a weird thing in gender politics where it is easier to get women to vote for other women for advocacy offices like Senate and Congress than it is for administrative offices like governor or president.
Why do you think that
in
is?
the way. I don't know. They perceive senator as an advocate. And I work for Christine Todd Whitman.
As in she's going to fight for me.
Yeah. Patty Murray in Wisconsin.
Yeah. Didn't you get her to beat Florio?
Well, Patty Murray got elected on a very clever slogan, a mom amongst the millionaires in the U.S. Senate. And, I'm an advocate. We ought to have a mom in there. We got a veterinarian.
Right.
Right. It's a deliberative body. It's like your lawyer. She's going to make an argument. They used to run ads, Southern Democrats did, against female candidates in primaries in the Deep South, showing the male governor on a tank. The National Guard needs a commander who understands the battle order and it worked. I worked for Christine Todd Whitman, both of her successful campaigns. We never carried the female vote, and she was pro-choice all the way.
Yeah.
Almost all the way. Liberal Republican, right out of the Rockefeller mold on most issues. And we could never get women to vote for her. And it was more a class thing than anything else.
Yeah, I think people don't understand the class differences.
You ran the race, Florio was one of those races, right?
Yeah, we beat Jim Florio. Yeah, or as we used to call him, the worst governor in New Jersey history.
And that's saying something.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, exactly. That's a tall order. And the way that politics is changing, how is your business is also in a point of drastic upheaval. For sure. The television business is also crazily, and that you talk about the balkanization of our culture. The way I approach all of that stuff, cakes or what have you, is I have my beliefs, but not everybody in the country believes in what I believe in and agrees with everything that I agree in.
Dope and monsters?
And I know. and that's what drives me crazy about a lot of Bernie bros is it's just anti-Trumpism, but it's the same fealty to this cult of personality. Right. Like, no,
it's also
people think that Donald Trump is the savior. Bernie Sanders is the savior.
It's also grievance politics. Trump blames everything on guys tunneling in from Mexico. Bernie's big shtick is you want to get a PhD in yoga, candle making?
Yeah.
Sure. It'll cost $400,000, but you can't let the man put you in debt. The corporate vaults have all the money. He'll pay.
Right.
So it's the same grievance.
I was very surprised. I was very surprised that when he said college would be free, that he got a lot of support amongst people in college.
It was like Rand Paul when I went to his thing at the Iowa straw poll and I got a contact high because 2/3 of his voters were free dope guys. So okay, I'm on board.
I don't believe in. We just have to take the things that I believe in and ram them through so everybody agrees with us. That's not how it works. It's and the thing that I have seen is because of niche entertainment, niche news sources, that everything is tailored to you. And you fall into this false belief of why isn't everything the way I want it to be? Why do I have to watch shows that I don't like? Why do I, everything should be what I want. And I think people forget, there's a lot of different things that go into this. And you kind of put up with shit you don't like. It's part of being in a large family.
Well, both businesses are in a direct to consumer model, right? If you will. TV and film are evolving into that. But the business of politics is a direct to consumer model. The difference is, on the motion picture and entertainment and TV side, there are myriad choices and options. On the political side, you can choose between Hillary or Donald Trump.
Right.
It was back when we were kids and there were only 3 networks.
Right.
And nobody, and you didn't want to watch ABC, so you got to choose between NBC and CBS.
Right.
There's just not as many choices. It's not directly analogous, I guess is what I'm saying. The infinite choice for the consumer in media there's not reflected by an infinite choice in politics. There isn't one.
Though there's pressure to go there. And I think it's a bad thing because you got to force consensus. So you look at these Latin American countries. I've worked in a few of 28 parties.
Yeah,
and then you play the coalition game.
It's the Green Party and this party.
Yeah. And I think there was a lot to be said for 3 news networks because everything got mainstream and went through a pretty good filter, often by older guys who, were a little left of center for my taste, but got shot at in wars and were grown-ups.
Right.
Yeah, but there was a professionalism attached to the fact that A, they made money doing it.
Right.
And B, they got great ratings doing it in a very professional, grown-up way. And that's gone.
Yes.
Yeah, now broadcasting's gone. Everything's narrow. Which is kind of interesting for niche creative, but you lose the unifying forces. It's like there was a big discussion about in the 70s. All these housing communities were built with garage out architecture. No main street. You didn't know your neighbors. You didn't walk around. Then it kind of came back in some of these communities architects were building where there was a main street. People like to walk around and everything. But what we find in politics, we used to have the model of the precinct where it'd be a captain, 30 houses, somebody would go door to door, tell party headquarters, and then you'd have the other party's captain across the street. Now it's all virtual. Your captain is on Facebook. It's your sister, the teacher, 1,000 miles away.
Yeah.
And you don't know your neighbors that much.
Yeah. No, forced consensus is important, especially in a mass endeavor. The night before D-Day, they were like, okay, so who thinks that we should go this way?
Right.
Who thinks that we should go that way?
Yeah.
Who doesn't like the idea of boats? I want to make sure everybody knows, everybody needs to be heard.
Yeah. Now, there are some gluten in the rations.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So anybody who can't handle that, we're telling the Nazis that you're taking the day off.
Yeah,
was it Patton who's gluten free? Ask George Patton if he's gluten free.
Yeah, there is at a certain point you have to.
Yeah,
everybody has to march in the same direction.
Singapore, it works.
So Fantagraphics publishes the book,
Correct.
and then you're writing haikus.
Right.
Are you going to write another book?
I am working on that slowly but surely now.
Mhm.
Like I said, the
Second album, always
second
a trick.
album, and it is a little intimidating, but mostly it's just finding time. Like I said, for the last couple of years with tour managing Dave and the Blasters, I've been away from home for 300 days a year, and
Yeah, that's a lot of road.
yeah, and it's you know, sometimes you can grab a few minutes to write, but really, and I'm not getting home from this trip until New Year's Eve.
Oh, really?
So I've just I'm going to put that off to next year. So
And where are you Christmas and all that stuff?
I drop the Blasters off at the airport in Pensacola, Florida, early in the morning on Christmas Eve, and then I drive to Los Angeles. So I'll be driving in Texas on Christmas.
Wait a minute. Okay. Wait. So you're with the Blasters. It's not Phil and Dave. It's the Blasters.
Phil's Blasters,
Right.
which is
Dave?
everybody except for Dave.
Okay, and Dave's not playing with them.
No.
Okay.
He left the band in 1986, and
We'll play with them on occasion.
yeah, he'll do in Los Angeles. He'll do a benefit show.
Right.
He'll do special events, so I go from here to I fly to Boston on Sunday, and then we're doing the East Coast, and then with the Reverend Horton Heat, and then drop them off Christmas Eve morning, and then I'll be just driving to Los Angeles.
And because you have rented this van, or
Why
aren't you flying?
I'm flying because they've already started.
No, why aren't you flying back to Los Angeles?
Oh, because we have the van with all the gear and everything.
Okay, you
in
have the
it.
van
Yeah.
here, and it's easier to drive it yourself than to ship it. And,
Yeah, and you got to get the van back. So
right.
it's
you don't own the van though.
They do. Yeah.
They do. Oh, the Blasters own the van.
Yeah.
Okay.
So they own the van, and it's got to get back home. So
Okay.
that'll be me, and we'll send them home. They have families and Christmas stuff to do.
Sure.
I don't care about Christmas stuff really,
Right.
and I'll see my daughter when I get home.
Yeah, sure. That's all well and good. And do you, when you're traveling on the road, like to me, that doesn't sound like the worst thing on earth.
No, I driving by myself part is great. I
Yeah.
mean, I have to deal with my bladder and my
Yeah.
appetite, and I can listen to my stories, which is basically just MSNBC all day long.
Right.
So-
Yeah. Daily dose of rage.
yeah, and or I'll throw on a podcast or two, and or silence. That's good too, and it gives
Right.
gives
Very
me
meditative.
gives me a chance to ignore the outside world, and visit those truck stops we were talking about earlier.
Yeah. And do you sleep in the van, or you get a hotel? And
Get a hotel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Treat yourself right.
I'm not a hobo, Dana.
But you do have a bindle.
Yes, well, that's just for aesthetics.
So what is the second book about?
It just picks up where the last one ended, really.
Same characters?
Same characters, a few new ones, and, without giving away the ending to the first book for those who haven't read it, it mostly deals with the male version of mourning, which is different than the female version, because we, as men, as men of a certain age, we're not we're really not taught how to do that.
No.
You
In
know?
fact, it's funny. I've talked about this before. There was that saying where I grew up, Kennedys don't cry.
Right.
Well, that's really unhealthy. Yeah. Mourning is viewed as a weakness.
It is.
Like, actually, it's not. It's
Well, and we do. I mean, it's gonna the feelings are going to manifest themselves in some ways, and so if you do it, in my case, they manifest themselves in violent outbursts and self-destructive behavior, not necessarily involving drugs and alcohol, but there's a lot of different kinds of self-destructive behavior.
Yeah, sure.
And
I'm familiar.
Yeah, when my father passed away many years ago, I was, you dealt with getting the family to Phoenix and dealing with the burial and all that other stuff. And then 2 years later, I'm sitting on the porch, smoking a cigarette and just start bawling for seemingly no reason at all.
Yeah,
and
I go through that.
It's going to come out.
Yeah, it hits. I'm definitely like that. I have been in situations that I didn't feel it until usually couple months later.
Yeah.
Like, something will happen, and then 3 months later, I'll wake up and like, holy shit!
Well, and to deal with that subject and then still make it funny is we'll see how it turns out. But that was that's the goal. Is like I can't think in literature where the subject has been dealt with. Obviously, a Year of Magical Thinking deals with it from the female perspective, and I mean, in the end, it's not that much different, but it's just the way a 54-year-old male was raised. We don't get lessons, or we're not. And there's no Mourning for Dummies book yet. Actually, there probably is, but I haven't seen it. And
there's your book.
That's what I'm going to call it.
You should call it that. You should call it that.
I'm sure there is I'm sure that they have a copyright on that for dummies. But no,
I'm going to write Ventriloquism for Dummies.
My working title is Pretend I Never Happened. So we'll see.
Pretend I know. Look for it.
Yes.
In your grocer's freezer section. Well, you've got to get back on the big, beautiful road.
I do.
Out and traverse the scars on the sickened body that is the interstate highway system of this great land. What does the next 10 years look like in broadcast television?
In broadcast?
Not broadcast, but
I can tell you the next 10 years in broadcast, and it's ugly.
Yeah. What is it?
I don't know what it becomes, honestly.
Yeah.
I think it becomes a largely affiliate driven, and I mean that in the sort of Sinclair broadcasting nefarious way, business, because the only money left to make in that business is in the owned and operated stations. That's really, you're not making money in the network.
Did the
business.
CBS Star Trek experiment work, where Star Trek Discovery was used as bait to get people to sign up to CBS streaming?
Not yet,
because it's not on the network.
Here's the problem with what CBS is doing. Streaming generally is technology that's been adopted by everyone under 30. They grew up, their parents paid for cable or satellite. They left the house. They're not going to pay for cable and satellite, so they'd rather stream it or steal it. So that's pretty much, I'm throwing a wide demographic blanket over it, but everyone under 30 feels that way. The CBS audience is the oldest audience in broadcast television. So they're trying to force old people who I'm sure you've seen your parents try to operate any piece of technology.
Yeah.
They're trying to force those people towards streaming, and it's not happening.
Right.
Also, their content is not for young people. So Star Trek, the following is not tweens who want YouTube. So as a result, that strategy, I think, is flawed from the jump off. But are networks going to head towards that model? Sure. That'll ultimately become the distribution model.
Yeah. Cause streaming has one great card trick. It can be monetized. In other words, if you've got a show that 200,000 people learn to love, and they will pay $1.99 a month for that. The revenue you get out of those 200,000 people at that amount, even if there are other shows, is much better than you're ever going to do with advertising. You know, it's kind of like the cable carriage fees.
Right.
So the streaming has the ability to make shows with small audiences profitable if they're sticky enough. But we're in that demographic bubble where we got older viewers are like the blinking VCR light who can't be served by the market, and the younger viewers aren't quite big enough to do it all yet. And you got YouTube moving in, trying to grab the same territory, and iTunes and Amazon. Everybody's there.
Yeah, it's interesting. My daughter, my oldest daughter, loves the movie Coraline, the stop motion animated movie. And the other day, I'm going through the TV and I see that she rented it. And I go, "Why is Coraline on here?" And she goes, "Oh, we were watching it." I was like, "The DVD is right in that drawer."
No,
it was just easier. It was just easier.
That's old people technology.
It's just easier to sit on the. I mean, literally that couch to that drawer.
One click.
Yeah. It was $2.99. Yeah.
But that's we talked about this the last time I was on here. You know, the in-car DVD player begat that mentality, which is I can have it when I want it, how I want it, where I want it. Right. And once you give that to the consumer, there's no putting that toothpaste back in the tube.
Yeah.
They're not going to give up command and control like that. So it is easier for your daughter to click twice.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Then go get the DVD and put it in. Yeah. Because she thinks, I want it now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't want to get up.
Next, it'll be voice. Hey, Alexa, play Coraline.
Sure.
And then bing, you get a $2
it's already
bill.
There.
That's another Chinese thing, just to bum us all out some more.
So's my kid.
Okay, well, there. Yeah. Oh, and a secret agent moving in.
Exactly.
In the AI and all this.
How long have you been in this country, comrade?
Is that what you meant? There's another Chinese thing.
Yeah. In the world's most awkward transition.
Speaking of Chinese things.
Speaking of Chinese things to spend all our money.
Because they have no privacy laws over there, they have the ability to scale up AI power much quicker.
Oh,
is that,
true.
Mike, is totalitarian capitalism the model of if you accept that this was the American century just finished, let's say. Now it went 1910 to 2010. It just finished.
Yeah.
The speech.
And he's not going anywhere because he changed the method
he consolidated
of
all the power.
There.
Yeah.
The old method they had was very smart because the hardest thing in dictatorship is old dictator, new dictator. How do you switch? And so they have kind of the horrible cage match, and there can be a civil war and trouble. So the Chinese had collective leadership. You know, the Politburo.
It's party
it was a
dictatorship.
committee, and they'd all kind of agree. This guy's gotten rid of most of that. So he'll be here forever, but secession becomes a big, tricky, risky, destabilizing thing.
Right.
I don't know. Their model of authoritarian politics and basic free enterprise
and social freedoms enough to keep everyone in check, but
it's a pretty formidable model. You know, I was in China in 2008 or 2009. I took a freighter across the Pacific. Long story.
Wow.
And I had to write a script for HBO. I started getting the business affairs lawyer. Okay, time to turn it in. The check had cashed, and so I get there. Everybody says you're in a freighter. They imagine I'm in a hammock fighting for coconuts with a knife. 10 guys in the engine room. It's like
shooting
a
off Somali pirates.
It's no, exactly. German captain, you know. Yes, I feel bad about the old days. You know. And I love you, America. It's a huge container ship. So anyway, we go into Shanghai and we get off, and a couple of the Chinese longshoremen come up to talk to me to practice their English. At the port of Long Beach, nobody's practicing their Chinese, and you know they had like the 100 words, and they were there, and I said, "What's your healthcare like?" And they go, "China, work then die."
Yeah.
And so that's the other team, and our political freedoms are important. I don't want to change them, but we got to use them like grown-ups, because when all we do is fight ourselves all the time, the other guys with the 1,400 geniuses and no privacy laws, so their AI can move really quick. Why does that count? You see the little chess thing in the news yesterday? So remember Big Blue, the super chess computer that beat the world's greatest player, who spent 30 years of his life learning the game? Well, an AI machine just beat Big Blue 2 hours after they told it what chess was. It learned chess for 2 hours, then wiped out the best chess computer in the world.
Jeez.
AI is really important and really powerful for the future.
This is all the Kurzweil.
Yeah, exactly.
Stuff.
And so we're normally the best at everything. We have the best secondary universities. We have the best capital system. We still have the best courts. You know, we play with a lot of stuff, but we're just screaming at each other on cable TV and electing reality show president. There is a way to blow our franchise, you know?
Oh, I think we have. That's my dour take on it.
Treyas did a great study with a bunch of other really smart guys. where they compared next 30 years China with what they got, and North America, not U.S., North America, Canada, us, Mexico as an economic unit.
Right.
And we beat them. But we have to like get up and do some push-ups and get organized here. Instead, we're dealing with this clown presidency.
Yeah. Is there a historical, who was again, looking from 300,000 feet down, in 100 years when they're talking about, the American presidency, is there anybody that they teach alongside Trump?
You could do the Wayback Machine and find some kind of like Jackson, some populist who trampled out of mud in the boots and slugged a White House steward once in a while, wild guys, sword fights in Congress and all that.
Yeah.
But in the modern era,
yeah,
I think he is unique.
I do too. I can't think of another.
Yeah. It makes Nixon look like Gandhi.
Yeah. No, I was, I voted for Obama over Romney, and now I'm like, Romney, I'll go.
Please.
I'd drive him into town. Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
For sure.
Or Jeb Bush. Yeah. I'll give him a
But
ride.
that goes to what Mike said, which is competency.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have a friend who's still in DC doing what you used to do. And he said the ignorance is stupefying.
Yeah. No, it's, I was listening to the,
I
saw a great bumper sticker that said, any functioning adult 2020.
I was listening to the hearings where they were working over the FBI director, and the level of pure moron in some of these members of Congress. I've worked
unreal.
with a lot of them.
Some of those
is in both parties. It's pretty bad. I think one of the big problems, and this doesn't get talked about enough, is that the stakes of politics have become just another reality show. Your vote's really important because you screw it up. Next thing you know, your kid gets drafted, never see him again. Stuff happens. But now, because we really haven't had, we've had wars that have been horrific, but relatively small by World War I, World War II casualty standards. Mm-hmm. And, we have kind of people who are doing well around the economy who kind of create great bubbles, their own schools and all that kind of stuff. We haven't had a lot of pain, real pain as a country. And so votes are just kind of like a TV, Americans just vote and get entertained. Politics hasn't become very serious. And so we make non-serious choices because nobody takes time to really think about it. Or they just vote their frustration. The Bernie guys are mad that the man says they can't have a free PhD. The Trump guy's mad because they laid off guys at a metal shop. I'd be mad too. I'm 55. I'm not going to learn to work a lathe, and then I'm not going to go do a feminist puppet theater group, Grant and Oakland. I'm not going to get retrained for a lot. So there's a lot of reasons to really be mad. Real wages haven't risen for most people in 10 years. And in 20 for a lot, they've gone down. So I get all that, but the vote is what steers the country. And in this new pop culture politics where it's just who's your favorite housewife, who's for president, Trump's feuding with who, and the network world and news, cable news, that just sells conflict every day because it's good show business. You notice how in political coverage, and I work at one of them, and I think other than a few of the ghouls in primetime, they're better than most. NBC News, the straight side, I'm very proud of. They, every day is covered like the most important day of the campaign.
Yeah.
Every bit of trivia is the biggest thing. And that, it's a great business, but people don't take this as seriously as they should. And now we're going to have more problems.
Well, I think
that's my downer note there as we go from comedy.
I already said we gave up the American primacy.
I think I speak for everyone when I say,
Other podcasts reach for the sky. Dana Gould Hour. We barely try.
This has been the Dana Gould Hour, brought to you by the Internet. Music by Andy Paley, with Jake Posner behind the board. Produced by Jeff Fox. Graphic design and web production by Spencer Hunt and Segan Friend. Sound editing and post-production by Jalinda Palmer and Joe Napolitano. Hey, if you like the show, why don't you drop us a line at show@danagould.com. Tom Kenny speaking.
I'm a DJ, I'm a person, I'm a singer, I love to sing and DJ. Boom! Peace out. You want me? Peace out. Boom.